Chapter 21:20. Boom! An amazing power poured into Yi Shiwen's body. It was the power of a deity. Even if it was only a small part, the energy was enough to shake the world. A majestic power majestically poured into Yi Shiwen's body. Then, an even more powerful consciousness directly poured into Yi Shiwen's mind. It wanted to obliterate his consciousness and fuse it with that consciousness. Yi Shiwen's face, which was supposed to be waiting for the fusion calmly, showed a disdainful smile. Idiot! Sure enough, the majestic power just poured into his body, and that mighty consciousness directly wanted to destroy his consciousness. At the same time, the mysterious space in his body and the enlightening mind ancient trees reacted almost instantaneously. The Mingxin ancient tree directly flew out a divine light, which shocked the invading consciousness. At the same time, the mysterious space directly emitted a mighty energy and directly smashed into the consciousness of the deity. Boom! How could this be? How could this be? The deity did not expect that there would be such a change, which was far beyond his imagination. Yi Shiwen had already thought of this. Previously, the old ghost of the emergence immortal exterminating saber wanted to rush into his mind and erase his consciousness, and use his body to be reborn, which was to be reborn in a shell. He, who had two mysterious existences to suppress his mind, was least afraid of such an attack. If it was a head-on confrontation, there might be some uncertainty, but it was just an attack on the spirit. For him, there was no easy solution. Don't touch me! What's all this nonsense? Break! This deity roared madly. The huge roar reverberated in Yi Shiwen's entire mind, wanting to break through everything. The defense line jointly arranged by the Mingxin ancient tree and the mysterious space showed signs of collapse. An inexplicable energy swept over. Stabilize! At the same time, Yi Shiwen also reacted in time. He shouted directly, and the crumbling defense line was instantly stabilized. In Tianyuan Mirror, countless Xian cores were burning and poured into the mysterious space and the Mingxin ancient tree. It instantly strengthened the power, and directly suppressed the restless consciousness of the deity. But at the same time, the Xian core was also burning at an alarming rate, but as he continued to throw in the Xian core, the god's consciousness was actually slowly being refined by him, and every time he refined a little bit, he could feel that his realm had obviously increased by a notch. This was an amazing thing. If he could completely refine this deity's consciousness, he would get a part of the deity's inheritance and perception of heaven. For him, this benefit was simply unimaginable. However, although this idea was good, it was extremely difficult to achieve. It required a very long time. During this time, he must use the Mingxin ancient tree to stabilize this consciousness and spirit. At the same time, he must use the mysterious space to refine and analyze it. This process would consume countless Xian cores. Even if Yi Shiwen had made a fortune, it would still be very strenuous to bear the burden of such consumption. However, at this time, he couldn't care so much. Wealth was sought in danger. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If he wanted to have a hope of achieving the Tao in the shortest time, he must do extraordinary things and be an extraordinary person. After the spirit was also fixed and isolated by Yi Shiwen, the energy that directly poured into Yi Shiwen's body was like a group of wild beasts that had lost control. It directly rushed out like a flood. Although this energy was insignificant compared to the peak of the deity, it was condensed from the power of faith over the past countless years. This power of faith was attached to the deity's statue, making it produce divinity. Therefore, after the deity's death, it could retain the last bit of self-respect. Even if it was in imminent danger, it was much better than directly dying the deity. And these countless years of power of faith directly poured into Yi Shiwen's body. Moreover, the power from the outside was constantly pouring in. It seemed that his body would explode. Melt for me, melt for me! Yi Shiwen roared and displayed the great art of melting. His whole body was filled with a shocking demonic aura. The demon wings behind him directly spread out, like the wings of the sky, incomparably huge. His whole body was surrounded by it. His whole body was tossing and turning in pain. He used all kinds of methods to try to contain this power. However, this power belonged to the deity. If it was another deity, there might be a way to control it, but if it was Yi Shiwen, he was far from having such an ability. "Seal for me!" Yi Shiwen roared. Countless spirit energies condensed in the void, and transformed into a huge seal character. Then, it ferociously sealed his body. The surging divine power that had been very active suddenly quieted down. It had been sealed by his seal character. However, even if he had the word seal, he couldn't rely on his own strength to seal this divine power. He had to constantly burn the Xian core and use the boundless lingqi of the Xian core to suppress this divine power. Yi Shiwen was constantly panting. This matter was far beyond his expectations. He didn't expect that the deity would be so cruel. He actually wanted to use him to be reborn and occupy his body. He didn't expect that the battle would end in this way. "Damn it! You dared to betray me! You dared to betray me! I'll tear you to pieces as soon as I get out of here. That's my divine power. It belongs to me." That deity's angry roar echoed in Yi Shiwen's mind. However, Yi Shiwen knew that this god wasn't boasting. In fact, it was very likely to happen. If he couldn't suppress and refine this god, then it would be a disaster for him once he came out of this place. Originally, he thought that he still had more than 40 billion Xian cores. It was enough for him to use for a long time. However, if he continued to burn it like this, even if he didn't engage in a fierce battle, he might not be able to survive for a year. It was almost at the speed of hundreds of Xian cores per second. What was more terrifying was that this wasn't an instantaneous consumption, but a long-term consumption. If this continued, it wouldn't take long. According to his estimation, he might not be able to refine this deity in such a short time. In other words, he must now open up a new source of income, and it was imperative to do so. The only thing in front of him was the source of God, which was hidden in the core of the god's tomb and carried by the deity. Only by obtaining those divine source could Yi Shiwen continue to refine this deity without being devoured by him. In other words, whether he was willing or not, he must compete for those divine source. He barely controlled the restless power in his body and continued to refine it. He could feel that the power in his body was constantly increasing. This was using the divine power to cleanse his body and complete the most thorough transformation. After the end of the mythological era, it was almost unheard of that there were still people who could use divine power to refine their bodies. These people were almost all people who were favored by the god. These people were born with incomparable strength, and in the end, they could quickly stand out from their peers. However, that was the deity's initiative to baptize them. Now, Yi Shiwen was half forcibly imprisoning the divine power in his body. Ordinary people couldn't do it at all, and their body would explode on the spot. But for Yi Shiwen, it was not a problem. His tyrant body itself was extremely powerful. In addition, he had nourished his body with divinity all year round. There had already been extraordinary changes, and he was naturally different from ordinary people. At this time, he finally had a chance to raise his head and take a good look at the statue. This statue was carved with a demon god. The head of the demon god was a wolf, and the body of the demon god was in the shape of a human. He didn't know what race he was from, but since he could cultivate to become a god, he naturally couldn't be weak. No matter how weak his foundation was, after cultivating to become a god, he would already be different. In this group of divine tombs, besides the demon gods, there were demon gods. This was the battlefield where countless demon gods and demon gods from the demon coalition army who invaded the heaven realm fought with the Emperor of Qin. The result was also obvious. So many demon gods and demon gods were killed by the Emperor of Qin at that time. Even though the Emperor of Qin had yet to prove his Tao at that time, His power was close to an incredible level. It was far from what Yi Shiwen could guess and understand now. No matter how glorious it was in the past, it had turned into dust now. It was useless. While he was still sighing with emotion, there was a sudden violent fluctuation in the void. The array that shrouded the entire valley suddenly exploded, revealing two huge figures. Dai Jibai and the Thunder Behemoth had already chased after him. There's actually a statue here, and it still has divine power. It's really great. The Thunder Behemoth's face revealed a somewhat greedy look, especially when he looked at the statue. This statue itself was made of extraordinary material. In addition, it had been immersed and transformed by divine power for countless years. It could already be regarded as a divine object. Even if it was used to smash people, it could be regarded as infinite power. Boy, for the sake of this statue, I will leave your corpse intact, Dai Jibai said with a cold smile. His face revealed a somewhat sinister smile. An incomparably huge wooden stick appeared in his hand. As he waved it, the sky collapsed and the earth sunk. The sky and the earth changed color. It was a very powerful divine tool. Ha ha ha, I will also spare you. I originally wanted to swallow you in one bite. The Thunder Behemoth also laughed and said in a very good mood. But what should we do? I have no intention of sparing you. Chapter 21-21. But what should we do? I don't intend to spare you. Yi Shiwen's voice immediately awakened the two of them who were still immersed in the surprise of discovering the divine object. What did you say, hateful human? The Thunder Behemoth roared. He couldn't stand being despised by others, not to mention a human that he had never thought highly of. I think you've really lost your mind. You've completely lost your mind. You're actually not going to let us go? Dai Jibai's face showed a hideous smile. I originally wanted to leave your corpse intact, but you gave up this opportunity on your own. Don't blame me then. Humph, it's not certain who will let who go, and who will spare who, Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. Boom. Dai Jibai, who was furious, had already taken the lead to attack. The huge wooden stick directly smashed down. It looked just like an ordinary wooden stick, and it was quite rough. It even looked like a big tree on the mountain had its branches chopped off, and it was directly taken out and thrown. But in an instant, countless wood attribute laws surged out, declaring his extraordinariness. In an instant, everything turned into a wood attribute world, like a kingdom. And at the moment when Dai Jibai made his move, Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that innumerable wood-attributed energy had gathered around him and was about to directly grab his body. However, he saw countless trees in the sky. Under the influence of wood-attributed energy and talismans, they began to crazily swell up. Their branches were like huge tentacles, directly grabbing towards Yi Shiwen and holding him in place. This was a simple and crude fighting method, but the simpler and more crude the fighting method, the more amazing the power. It was simple and direct, without too many tricks, so no one could escape. Whoosh! The demon wings on Yi Shiwen's back spread open, and he instantly evaded the entanglement of countless trees. But for a moment, more trees grew out of the void, forming a huge tree that directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. Break for me! The emergence immortal exterminating saber in Yi Shiwen's hand directly slashed out a shocking saber light, as if it wanted to cut the world into two halves, directly crushing countless trees that rushed towards him. However, even more trees chased after him in an instant, not giving him any chance to catch his breath. His range of movement was getting smaller and smaller, as if he could be forced to a corner at any time. At the same time, Dai Jibai's big stick kept coming down. Even Dai Jibai himself wasn't so anxious, because for him, as long as he kept forcing Yi Shiwen into a dead end, Yi Shiwen would collapse on his own in this way. He didn't need to do anything at all. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen shouted and took a step forward. The void trembled and countless golden waves appeared. At the critical moment, he directly avoided the entanglement of the trees. It was simply endless. What was even more terrifying was that Dai Jibai's big stick was like a maggot, following him like a shadow. It didn't care at all and directly smashed the sky and earth. No matter where Yi Shiwen hid, it was useless. Bang! Yi Shiwen spread out his hands, and directly grabbed a golden wall. That huge wooden stick ruthlessly smashed on the golden wall, and incomparably terrifying golden waves instantly swept in all directions. That terrifying power directly integrated into Yi Shiwen's body. If Yi Shiwen was under normal circumstances, even if he wasn't blasted out, he would probably have to exhaust all his strength to be able to remove this power. But at this time, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. All of it was integrated into Yi Shiwen's body, digested and absorbed by his full body of divine power. And his body stood steadily in the void, not moving at all, not even the slightest bit. Dai Jibai snorted coldly. He didn't expect that his full blow could not hit Yi Shiwen at all. Old Dai, you actually showed mercy. Do you know how much of a threat this person is to you and me? If we don't take advantage of this time to get rid of him, when he continues to grow, there will be nothing left for us. The lightning beast was a little puzzled. Why couldn't Dai Jibai deal with a puny 4th-level Paong realm cultivator? This wasn't Dai Jibai's usual style. If the Divine Union leader was said to be an extremely stubborn person, then Dai Jibai was 70% to 80% similar to him. Once he had made up his mind, he would absolutely not go back on his words. Since you won't deal with it, then leave it to me. The lightning beast roared loudly. In an instant, countless thunderbolts appeared out of nowhere and directly fell down, turning the surroundings into a sea of thunderbolts. This was an incomparably huge domain. In this domain of thunderbolts, he was a god. That huge body of his made people feel extremely afraid when they looked at it from afar. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate. He immediately unfolded his devil's wings and constantly dodged the lightning beast's attacks. The lightning beast's attribute was thunder and lightning. It was extremely fast. It had relied on this speed to defeat countless people. Almost in an instant, countless lightning bolts would fall down the moment Yi Shiwen flickered. They directly chased after Yi Shiwen and didn't let go, wanting to blast him to death. You do have some skills. Your speed is quite fast, but it's useless. We have already blocked you here today. You can't escape. The lightning beast opened its big mouth and suddenly formed a Yuan Qi bomb. Then, it fiercely blasted in Yi Shiwen's direction. This Yuan Qi bomb directly tore a huge crack in the sky and tore it apart in Yi Shiwen's direction. Boom! This Yuan Qi bomb, which contained the power of countless thunderbolts, fiercely blasted into Yi Shiwen's body. Endless smoke and dust billowed up, and endless energy waves swept in all directions, making it impossible for people to see what was happening inside. Who asked you to be so arrogant? You are still far from being able to stand in front of me. The lightning beast sneered. There was an almost ferocious smile on his face. He could imagine how terrifying the power of this Yuan Qi bomb was. Perhaps it could directly blast Yi Shiwen to death on the spot. But soon, his smile completely froze on his face. In the midst of the endless impact of the Yuan Qi bomb and shock waves, a humanoid figure slowly stood upright. His face even showed a bit of horror and fear. He couldn't imagine how this could happen. It's impossible. Even a real 6th heaven of Paong realm expert would be killed by my primordial Qi bomb. Not to mention that he is only at the 4th heaven of Paong realm. Although he has shown great strength, he is only at the 4th heaven of Paong realm. In the myths, although this strength is not weak, it is still far from it. But now Yi Shiwen took a direct hit from him and did not die. What should I do? I said that this time, I have no intention of letting you go. Just in time, let's see how strong this power can be. Suddenly, as soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, a more majestic and terrible power flew out from the depths of the smoke and dust, and a golden aura directly rose into the sky. They couldn't be more familiar with this aura. Divine power, it is the power of divine power! The face of the thunder behemoth immediately revealed a somewhat horrified expression. They could only sense the little bit of divine power that Yi Shiwen hadn't had the time to absorb in the valley. It was completely different from having such a huge amount of divine power gushing out all of a sudden. At this time, even the face of Daijibai, who seemed to be disguised as a mountain giant, showed a look of color. The power of the gods was terrifying to imagine. In the mythological era, people were not even allowed to mention the names of the gods behind their back. This showed how terrible the gods at their peak were. If one did not prove his Tao, he was just an ant. Even in the face of a fallen god, he still did not dare to take it lightly, lest he came into being. How did the power of divine power fall on him? Is it the inheritance of this statue? The lightning beast's face turned ugly. At his level of cultivation, there was almost nothing that could be compared to proving his Tao. With his talent, it was impossible for him to prove his Tao steadily. Without sufficient fortuitous encounters, it was impossible for him to stand out in the end. But Yi Shiwen gave him another idea and opportunity. Damn it, hand over the divine power. This is not something that an insignificant mortal like you can collect. The lightning beast roared and took the lead to attack. The lightning and thunder in the sky directly turned the void upside down. He had completely lost his patience. He wanted to strangle Yi Shiwen to death and snatch the divine power. Humph, it is not up to you to say whether I am qualified or not. The smoke and dust gradually dissipated, and Yi Shiwen's original body was finally seen. At this time, he was holding the emergence immortal exterminating saber in his hand. He directly slashed out with the saber. The light in the sky swept up wildly in the void, and fiercely slashed at the lightning hand condensed by the thunder. Boom! In Yi Shiwen's hand, Yi Shiwen's emergence immortal exterminating saber, with the support of powerful power, slashed the lightning hand of the lightning beast, and directly cut off half of its arm. One slash. It was just one slash, but it had such amazing power. Yi Shiwen could feel that when he slashed out with the emergence immortal exterminating saber, a surge of power surged out of his body and replenished every part of his body. It was a warm feeling. No matter how much quintessence he expended, there was still this powerful divine power supporting him. An unprecedented feeling of power descended upon him. Chapter 21-22. An incomparably powerful divine power was constantly surging in his body. Although it was forcefully suppressed by the seal character that burned countless Xian cores, it was only a part of the power that erupted, and it already made him feel that his power was constantly exploding. The attack of two Paong Realm 9th level masters was easily taken advantage of by him. This in itself had already proved the problem. If it were him, it would be impossible to take all the attacks of the two so easily. The Thunder Behemoth and Dai Jibai's faces turned ugly. Yi Shiwen's sudden increase in strength was beyond their expectations. It seems that you have swallowed all the divine power attached to this statue. It doesn't matter, you should have just swallowed it not long ago. As long as I kill you, the divinity will naturally fall into my hands again. The huge body of the Thunder Behemoth was faintly discernible in the void. It recovered from the slight panic just now, and with a slight movement, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. A top powerhouse like him simply looked down on the so-called genius warriors. There were only a few so-called geniuses who could rise up, and those who could pose a threat to them were even rarer. Boom! The Thunder Beast finally made its move. Its huge claws suddenly clawed out, and a mighty power of thunder pervaded the air. It transformed into a thunder kingdom in the sky. One could see that this power of thunder wasn't natural thunder if one looked carefully. Instead, it was condensed from thunder talismans. It had covered the entire heavens and the 10,000 worlds. It possessed boundless power, and had directly sealed the entire space. So, Yi Shiwen couldn't escape, and couldn't evade this attack. Yi Shiwen stood still as if he was scared silly. He let the claw with the boundless power of thunder fall on him. There were tremors everywhere, and even the void was torn apart. Just when this thunderclaw was about to hit Yi Shiwen's body, the emergence immortal exterminating saber in Yi Shiwen's hand suddenly clanged, and a saber light appeared. Countless saber principles appeared in it, forming a mighty light. Under the urging of the divine power in Yi Shiwen's body, a mighty power burst out and suddenly slashed towards the huge claw. Boom! An incomparably loud rumble rang out as the blade light and the endless lightning clashed in the void, shattering everything and tearing the sky apart. Those thunderbolts seemed to be a little tired after the fierce collision. However, Yi Shiwen's blade light was getting stronger and stronger under the support of his divine power. It seemed as if it would never get tired. Originally, it was impossible for the emergence immortal exterminating saber to unleash such terrifying power in Yi Shiwen's hands. However, divine power was originally of a much higher level than real essence. When the power was unleashed, it was completely different. This was the first time the emergence immortal exterminating saber had completely unleashed the light that belonged to it. Kara! 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 A series of shattering sounds came from the void. The endless thunderbolts were instantly shattered, and countless law talismans were directly shattered. Yi Shiwen's blade momentum didn't decrease in the slightest. It directly rushed towards the looming body of the thunder beast in the void. Whoosh! The blade light was extremely fast, and it slashed towards the thunder beast almost without any hesitation. The thunder beast's huge body didn't seem to have any possibility of evading it. However, in the nick of time, the thunder beast actually turned into a bolt of lightning and dodged the attack. It had been able to cultivate until now, defeat countless opponents, and become the current Deputy Union Master of the Divine Union. It wasn't just because it was big. When it reappeared, its entire body had appeared in the main plane and was no longer hidden in the void. That huge, pitch-black body was like an endless mountain range that covered the sky. It was as if it was a curtain of the sky. It was unimaginably huge. Beside it, even the mountain giant Daijibai, who was considered extremely huge, wasn't considered much. Even Yi Shiwen, who was used to seeing huge ferocious beasts, was a little surprised. No wonder it had to hide its body in the endless void. Such a huge body appearing in the main world was indeed shocking enough. You have some tricks up your sleeve. The blade in your hand is a little strange. It looks like a divine weapon, but it doesn't. However, no matter what it is, it will be mine. The thunder beast's huge eyes were extremely terrifying, and it carried a powerful aura of coercion. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and directly broke the coercion of this formidable, ominous beast. On the contrary, the tyrannical coercion on his body had actually affected this thunder behemoth, and had forced it to retreat unceasingly. The thunder beast only had the bloodline of the ancient thunder beast. The bloodline wasn't pure, but Yi Shiwen had the bloodline of the star beast flowing in his body. It was a true ancient ferocious beast, a tyrannical race that was once strong enough to challenge the dragon clan. High-level demonic beasts naturally had a strong deterrent to low-level demonic beasts. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate. He directly crossed the space, and instantly rushed to the front of the thunder beast. He directly chopped down the saber light. Under the blessing of divine power, the saber light was majestic, filling the world. The endless saber light intertwined into a huge network, directly shrouding the huge body of the thunder beast. The blade radiance contained golden divine power. It didn't even go through the conversion process and directly slashed down. He used all his strength to attack and didn't give the lightning beast a chance to turn the situation around. Because he was very clear that he could only be fierce now, but he was relying on his divine power to forcibly support himself. However, as more divine power was released, it was like a dam of 1,000 miles being destroyed by an ant's nest. A small hole would slowly spread, and it would cause the word seal to be unable to stop it. At that time, he was likely to self-destruct on the spot. More importantly, each attack would consume a part of divine power. Every time he used it, it would be less. He couldn't afford to consume it. So what if you have devoured divine power? What's so great about it? The Thunder Beast wasn't a benevolent creature. He suddenly opened his eyes, and an incomparably terrifying light flickered in his eyes. A single horn suddenly appeared on the top of its head. And that horn was exuding circles of thunder power. And Yi Shiwen's blade light was smashed into pieces inch by inch. It was impossible for Yi Shiwen's blade light to injure the thunder behemoth which was under the protection of the thunder. Thunder horn! Dai Jibai's eyes narrowed, and suddenly opened wide. It's actually this move. Has he been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen? It seems that this kid is really a disaster. I can't let him live. Being able to force me out of the thunder horn is enough for you to die in peace. In this world, there aren't many people who could force me to this extent. And those who succeeded are all dead now. You can go down and accompany them, the Thunder Beast said. Its voice was like a great bell, deafening and deafening. My thunder horn is inherited from an ancient vicious beast. It is the symbol of the thunder god. You are dead. The boundless power of thunder spread out, forming an incomparably huge thunder swamp, a kingdom of thunder. Within this kingdom, he was the only ruler, the only overlord. And these thunderbolts were composed of more exquisite thunder talismans than before. They even contained traces of golden divinity. He had tempered the thunder of this swamp to an unimaginable degree. The power of his body was also getting stronger and stronger. Even his whole body was covered with a layer of thunder armor, looking violent and powerful. Thunder horn? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes, looking at the thunder beast in front of him that was getting more and more tyrannical. Compared to before, it had improved a lot. Even in the 9th level of Paong Realm, there were few opponents who could rival it. This should be its true combat form. Today, you will pay for your ignorance. The Thunder Beast suddenly roared in a low voice, and its claws directly tore towards Yi Shiwen like a mountain range. A monstrous thunder power swept over majestically, directly tearing Yi Shiwen apart on the spot. Bang! An incomparably loud collision sound came, as if the world's hardest two pieces of gold and iron had fiercely collided with each other. Only such a terrifying collision sound could be heard. However, Yi Shiwen was not directly smashed to death. On the contrary, his hands firmly blocked the two giant claws that were tearing the sky. You think you can stop me? Divine power is not omnipotent. The Thunder Beast continued to roar, and the beast's claws suddenly increased the pressure. Crack! A crisp sound was heard, as if something had broken under this pressure, but it was definitely not Yi Shiwen's body. Boom! In Yi Shiwen's body, a majestic divine power rose directly from his body, like a flood sweeping out with a loud bang. The terrible power of the claw directly disrupted the seal character in his body, causing the divine power in his body to surge uncontrollably. I didn't intend to deal with you like this, but since you are in a hurry to die, then I will fulfill your wish, Yi Shiwen said coldly. The divine power in his body was still constantly gushing out, and his whole body was completely covered by the divine power. He was like a golden god of war, extraordinary and invincible. He was also very clear that if he continued to let the divine power gush out randomly, he would be stuffed to death before he could kill the enemy. Therefore, there was not much time. Finish the battle quickly. He suddenly leaped forward like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, he had already flown out. He stepped on the power of the 5 elements of the universe, and the saber light of the emergence immortal exterminating saber in his hand was like a terrible mountain torrent directly pouring down. Bang! This force directly slashed the Thunder Beast's body, the thunder armor was broken, and the whole person flew out. Chapter 21-23. How can he be so powerful? that thunder beast couldn't help but roar. It was taken aback. Its entire body was on the verge of collapse. Yi Shiwen's fighting style was simply rude and unreasonable. He did not care about the laws at all. He did not care about the mysteries of the great Tao of generals and demons. He relied on his violent and invincible divine power to crush the enemy. The thunder beast was blasted away. His huge body, which was like an endless mountain range, was sent flying. The whole scene was extremely shocking. While he was in shock, Yi Shiwen had already pounced on him. With earth-shattering divine power, he directly suppressed the thunder beast's head. His body, which was already on the verge of collapse, was now densely packed with cracks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Originally, he relied on his tyrannical strength to deal with Yi Shiwen. Who would have thought that Yi Shiwen would use the power of divine power to rise above him in one breath? Yi Shiwen was far more tyrannical than him. Fight. At this time, he realized that there was a huge gap between his strength and the current Yi Shiwen's. He was almost crushed. There was no other way. He directly opened his bloody mouth. That incomparably huge body could almost swallow a world. His whole body erupted with incomparably terrifying light. In particular, the thunder horn on top of his head erupted with the ninth heaven's thunder, and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen's face. The power of this thunder was created by God to punish the people of the world. Even if it was not the most and evil power, it would still be restrained by it. Unfortunately, it encountered Yi Shiwen. For him, what kind of thunder and what kind of divine punishment had he not encountered? This was nothing at all. Break for me. Yi Shiwen raised his hand. His big hand condensed a seal. It was the Han seal. It suppressed all directions. In the palm of his hand, a mountain range appeared. It suddenly fell down and suppressed everything. Rumble! The power of this thunder was directly suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was not stingy with this divine power. He did not care about it at all. He directly suppressed it. Dai Jibai's expression changed. He wanted to intervene, but the center of the battle between the two sides was too terrifying. Countless forces tore open cracks in the sky. Endless chaos poured out. No one could clearly see what was going on. Yi Shiwen directly broke through the thunder that filled the sky. Then, his big hand wrapped in endless divine power, on the spot rose against the wind, grew bigger and bigger, and suddenly grabbed the head of the thunder beast. Yi Shiwen directly pulled out the thunder horn on the top of the thunder beast's head. Suddenly, a huge bloody hole appeared on the head of the thunder beast. Fresh blood gushed out of it continuously. Roar! The thunder behemoth roared in pain. Its entire body was trembling, and its vision was blank. How could this be? He had never imagined that he would have such a day. The thunder horn, the source of his power that he was most proud of, had been pulled out by someone. He kept retreating. His huge body retreated rapidly like a collapsing mountain. It was a shocking scene. Dai Jibai, what are you waiting for? He roared in anger. Dai Jibai, who was watching from the side, almost had the urge to poke his own eyes blind. How could it suddenly become like this? Yi Shiwen could feel that the thunder horn contained endless power of thunder. Moreover, it was very pure. It was almost close to the source of the power of thunder. It could be refined into a powerful instrument. More than half of the thunder beast's martial power had been condensed in this thunder horn. But it had been pulled out by Yi Shiwen. So, its martial power had been greatly reduced, and its ferocious might had been consumed to an unknown extent. Yi Shiwen directly began to refine the entire thunder horn with his divine power. The power contained in this thunder horn was far beyond his level. It was impossible to refine it by relying on his own power. Even if he wanted to refine it, it would take a long time. However, it was different if he used the power of divine power to refine it. In just a moment, he had refined more than half of it. The powerful power contained in the thunder horn was constantly flashing in his hands. At this time, the thunder behemoth retreated directly, wanting to escape. Yi Shiwen glared and sneered. You want to escape? You're thinking too much. Stay here. His whole body was glowing with golden light. He looked majestic. He held the thunder horn in one hand, constantly emitting the power of thunder. His other hand directly jumped out with a shocking light, and grabbed towards the thunder behemoth. The power of the thunder horn was naturally very tyrannical. However, it was also because of this that the thunder behemoth's power was less than 10% after losing the thunder horn. It no longer had its previous ferocious appearance. In the face of Yi Shiwen's big hand, it dodged left and right, but there was no way to escape. All the space it could escape had been blocked. At this time, Dai Jibai finally made his move. His body moved, and his huge body suddenly jumped out like a small mountain. The wooden stick in his hand directly slammed down and hit Yi Shiwen. At the same time, a divine light flew out of his hand and flew towards the thunder behemoth's body to heal its injuries. Originally, the two of them were considered enemies. However, now that the enemy was in front of them, even if they were enemies on usual days, they couldn't have internal strife at this time. And you, if you didn't come out, maybe I would have let you go. However, since you're courting death, then don't blame me. Yi Shiwen sneered. He directly grabbed towards the void with his big hand and directly grabbed the wooden stick. Countless wood energies in the void were crushed by him, and couldn't stop his advance at all. Boom! There was a shocking collision between the two sides. The invincible wooden stick was shaken away under the power of the divine power. Yi Shiwen directly rushed out. He took a step forward, and his whole body was bathed in golden light like a golden god of war. He directly rushed out, and the surrounding world turned into a universe. The fist intention of the shattered star fist directly expanded. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and instantly blasted towards Dai Jibai. Dai Jibai retreated again and again, but his hands didn't stop at all. He held the wooden stick and constantly bombarded. The wood attribute energy erupted on his body with earth-shattering power. In the sky there were stick shadows all over the sky. Each stick head could bring earth-shattering energy when it exploded in the void. Yi Shiwen let out a long roar. The demon wings on his back spread open, and he rushed all the way out. The state of 5 emperors strengthening his body made him almost invincible. He bombarded with a punch, and whatever stick shadows were all smashed into pieces. Dai Jibai saw that Yi Shiwen's speed was amazing, and he was even more aggressive. Any kind of attack seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow in front of him. He gritted his teeth, and a somewhat hideous expression appeared on his face that seemed to be made of rocks. You forced me to do this. Go to hell. He roared loudly, and his whole body erupted with green light. It danced in the air, and formed an incomparably huge talisman. A huge wood word appeared in the air. This was the power of the wood attribute's origin source. He had obtained it by accident. It was precisely because he had comprehended the power of the wood attribute's origin source that his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, and he had even reached the level of the Divine Union's first Deputy Union Master. This wasn't just because he was the first leader to seek refuge with the Divine Union. More importantly, he was also the strongest expert in the Divine Union after the Divine Union's leader. This wood word talisman suppressed everything, and it carried amazing power. However, Yi Shiwen's face was damned. He directly grabbed it with one hand, and he actually wanted to grab the talisman with his own hands. Humph! You're really courting death. This is the energy of the origin source. How can you touch it? He laughed heartily. However, an astonishing thing happened. Yi Shiwen's hand emitted an astonishing radiance the moment he grabbed the charm. Then, an innumerable amount of divine power rushed out and grabbed the charm in his hand. Then, an earth-shattering radiance burst out. Rumble! Endless energy erupted from Yi Shiwen's palm. The wood word talisman wanted to break free from his hand, but it was useless. He suppressed it with an even more powerful divine power. He had actually grabbed it and extinguished it. The talisman couldn't be kept anymore. It directly turned into a mass of origin source power and was absorbed by him. Countless wood attribute origin source power was absorbed by him, and his skills were a notch higher than ever. More importantly, it actually helped the Phoenix regeneration technique to repair his body, which had been damaged by the impact of the powerful divine power. With the support of this wood attribute origin source power, Yi Shiwen could persist for a longer time. The most obvious manifestation was his wood emperor belt, which had directly condensed into a physical body. It wasn't just a phantom anymore. Suddenly, the wood attribute had reached great success, and it couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Damn it, go to hell! Dai Jibai's eyes suddenly opened. He didn't expect that his own wood attribute talisman couldn't suppress Yi Shiwen. His whole body's power was concentrated on the wooden stick, and he wanted to delay as much time as possible. He didn't believe that this person could let the divine power wreak havoc on his body. It was impossible for anyone else, even if that person was the leader of the alliance. Clang! Yi Shiwen directly grabbed the wooden stick with one hand, and the thunder horn in his other hand was ready to be launched. Under the refinement of the divine power, this thunder horn was completely refined by him in a short time, and the amazing power of thunder splashed in his hand. Boom! The thunder horn directly burst forth with the power of tens of millions of thunderbolts, crashing down on Dai Jibai. Chapter 21-24. Boom! These countless thunderbolts directly fell on Dai Jibai's body and blasted him away. It had to be said that the thunderbolt horn was extremely powerful. Originally, the Thunderbolt Beast was a top expert at the 9th level of the Paong realm who could be compared to Dai Jibai. And this Thunderbolt horn was condensed from more than half of his essence, so it was naturally powerful. If it had not encountered Yi Shiwen, who was like a freak who was not afraid of the thunder retribution, it could basically be said to have swept a large area. Basically, it could be said to be invincible and invincible. Coupled with the stimulation of divine power, its power was even greater to the extreme. Even with Dai Jibai's strength, he was seriously injured in an instant. A big hole was blasted in his chest, and countless thunderbolts were constantly surging in it. And at the side, the Thunderbolt Beast was a little dumbfounded. The power of his Thunderbolt horn was naturally great, and it was famous in the Xian world. Although it was only a mount of the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master, it could be said to be outstanding over the years. Its strength was even more shocking, and most of its strength came from the Thunderbolt horn. Even a peerless expert like Dai Jibai, who could compete with it, would not be willing to face its Thunderbolt horn head-on. But this Thunderbolt horn had only been in Yi Shiwen's hands for a short period of time, but he had actually refined it. How did he do it? In order to cultivate to this point, it did not know how many tens of thousands of years it had spent, but Yi Shiwen had already done it in such a short period of time. How was this possible? Divine power, it must be divine power. Gods, for someone like him who had already taken half a step into it, was no longer a secret. But at the same time, he also understood what kind of realm it was. Compared to those who had not reached the Tao realm, it was indeed like the gap between a peerless man and an ant. It was simply not a gap of a level. Even if they were both legendary experts, to refine his Thunderbolt horn, even an expert like Dai Jibai would need more than 100 years of effort. But this person in front of him had done it with his monstrous divine power. What was a miscalculation? This was a miscalculation. They hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would be able to turn things around by relying on his divine power. Moreover, his fighting prowess had soared to such an astonishing degree in one go. Seeing that the Thunderbolt horn in Yi Shiwen's hand was showing its power, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He had been arrogant all his life and had never submitted to anyone other than the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master. He had also never suffered such a big loss. However, his thunderbolt horn had been pulled out by Yi Shiwen. Such a thing was simply a great humiliation. However, he was very clear in his heart that Yi Shiwen was really unstoppable at the moment. The two of them couldn't deal with him at all. Even they knew that Yi Shiwen was just relying on his divine power to beat them. It was almost like he was using a cheating device. But so what? Yi Shiwen had a cheating device. They couldn't even report it here. Although they said so, they couldn't guarantee to what extent Yi Shiwen could hold on. At the very least, they absolutely couldn't hold on to that extent. Both of them had the same thought at almost the same time. They didn't discuss it with the other person at all. Both of them had the same thought and had almost made their decision in an instant. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them almost instantly fled in different directions. After discovering that the other party had the same thought, they couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Despicable, shameless. You want to leave? Don't leave. Stay here. The thunderbolt horn in his hand grew bigger and bigger in the sky. It directly blasted out a kingdom of thunder. Yi Shiwen, who was holding the thunderbolt horn, was like an incomparably powerful thunder god. He was simply the reincarnation of the thunder god. Under his control, countless thunderbolts directly bombarded towards the two of them like raindrops. Rumble! There was a loud collision sound. The two of them were directly bombarded without exception. They constantly screamed and fell to the ground. How could Yi Shiwen give them a chance to fight back? He directly pinched a seal and two mountains appeared in the sky. They fiercely smashed down and smashed the two of them into pieces. Yi Shiwen directly grabbed the flesh and blood that filled the sky and absorbed the essence and power within. Seal. After killing these two great masters, Yi Shiwen reluctantly breathed a sigh of relief. Although the divine power in his body was still surging, it was far less than before. Compared to when it had just flowed into his body, it was only about 1/3. In this battle, he had used up 1/3 of his divine power, and refining the thunder horn had also used up 1/3 of his divine power. Now, he was left with less than half. Although it consumed a lot of divine power, he didn't regret it. Beheading two masters of Paong Realm 9th level was simply like a legendary battle record. Although he had killed masters of this level before, it was almost a battle where both sides suffered. It was completely different from this completely one-sided battle. And refining the thunderbolt horn gave him another trump card and sharp weapon. This thunderbolt horn, if used well, could even severely injure a master of the peak of Paong Realm 9th level. However, without the divine power to drive it, just relying on his own strength to drive it, each time he attacked, he would need to consume more than 1,000,000,000 Xian cores. This was not his spiritual ability, and his strength was far inferior to it, so it could only be used as a trump card, and could not be used frequently. And the remaining divine power was sealed by him. After consuming 2/3 of it, the remaining divine power was finally within his control. He sealed it first and waited for the next battle to slowly digest it. Moreover, the blood essence and martial power of these two masters of Paong Realm 9th level were all for his use. It wouldn't be long in the future. As long as he digested the gains this time, he would go one step further and his strength would increase by another level. However, even though he had won the battle, it wasn't without a price. The divine power was rampaging in his body. Fortunately, his tyrant body was tyrannical. Otherwise, his body would have exploded and he would have died. However, this divine power had also left his body in a mess. It was as if he had been seriously injured after a great battle. Before he went to fight for the source of God, he had to recover from his injuries first. Even the blood essence and martial power had no time to use the great art of dissipation to wash his hands first. Everything must be focused on healing his injuries. He didn't have enough time to pay attention to it during the previous battle. However, He realized that his injuries were far more serious than usual now that he had started to examine it. He wasn't on the verge of death. However, the divine power itself possessed the immortal and eternal nature. So, the injuries caused by the divine power had directly caused eternal and irreparable damage to his body. In fact, it had even washed into his spirit. However, the enlightening mind ancient tree had stopped it in its tracks. Such injuries could not be healed at all if it was replaced by another person. Even if it could be maintained, it would only be a lingering hunger. However, Yi Shiwen had the Phoenix regeneration technique after all. It was still very different from ordinary people, but to repair it, it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. He immediately found a place and began to close up without any hesitation. However, he also divided his attention to pay attention to the matters of the divine tomb at all times. If the previous adventure in the divine tomb was to find the illusory inheritance of the deities, then he was going for the divine source now. If there was no divine source, there was no way for him to suppress the will of the deities in his body. Even if it was just the remnant divine thoughts of the deities, it was enough to impact him into an idiot. In order to survive, he had to obtain the divine source. The urgency in his heart was much stronger than before. After he left, the news of the fall of the two peerless experts of the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace spread. Although it was a secret that they plotted to kill Yi Shiwen, there was no wall in the world that didn't have ears. More importantly, after their deaths, it caused an uproar in the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace. Needless to say, the status of these two experts in the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace was almost above everyone else. Other than the leader of the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace, no one had a higher status than them. Such an existence had a high position in the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace and controlled the power of the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace. Now that they had died all of a sudden, there was no way to hide this matter. Even the leader of the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master were alarmed. The two of them had teamed up to kill Yi Shiwen. It should have been a simple matter, but in the end, the life origin that they had left in the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace was directly shattered. No one could hide it, so it was known almost immediately. This matter made the leader of the Divine Alliance and the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master furious. Soon, the news spread throughout the Divine Tomb and instantly caused an uproar. Everyone knew about it. In particular, this matter was most likely related to Yi Shiwen. The two of them had teamed up to kill Yi Shiwen. Now that the two of them had disappeared, they could not think of any other possibility besides Yi Shiwen. Given their strength, it was almost difficult to meet an opponent in the era where the deities did not appear. Even extraordinary existences like the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master and the leader of the Divine Alliance would find it very difficult to kill the two of them without making a sound. Intercepting and killing the two of them would make the Heaven Wasteland Palace and the Divine Alliance a mortal enemy. Even if someone had such ability, he should not have the motive to do so. All the spearheads were pointed at Yi Shiwen. Chapter 21-25. The death of these two experts could be described as an earth-shattering shock to the entire Xian world and even the nearby world. It was difficult for someone of this level to die even in a few decades or even 100 years. Apart from those who died naturally, how many people would be killed by others? People who had cultivated to this level all had trump card. If they had not been forced to the point of no return, how could they have died? What kind of means did Yi Shiwen have to force these two great experts to this extent? The Xian world was shocked. Yi Shiwen was no longer a greenhorn who only made them sigh that the new waves of the Yangtze River surpassed the old waves of the younger generation. He could actually push the old waves to death on the beach. Those old monsters who had cultivated for thousands or even tens of thousands of years had always looked down on these so-called young talent. But now they had really learned a lesson. These people were no longer people they could look down on. Many of the elders felt a little uncomfortable in their hearts. They had cultivated for many years, but these people had cultivated for many years. In the past, they were also high-spirited and vigorous, but now they had wasted their entire lives. Perhaps their skills were better, but they could never make up for the lost time. But more people wanted to know how Yi Shiwen did it. This was not something an ordinary person could do. If it was one person, then it could be said that he was lucky. But when he killed 2 masters of the Paong realm, it seemed that it was too far-fetched to say that he was just lucky. The disappearance of 2 such experts could not be explained by luck. Even if it was really luck, it was heaven-defying luck. No one knew what kind of means he had. Many people of the older generation could not help but sigh. There would always be talented people in every generation, and the new generation would replace the old. The Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace were even more furious when they received the news. However, in the Divine Tomb, their strength was far less tyrannical than outside. Moreover, for the top experts, no matter how many of them there were, they could not pose any threat. After entering the mythical realm, although the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace were still powerful, they were not nearly as invincible as when they were in the mysterious realm. The gap between the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace had been rapidly narrowed after Yi Shiwen had displayed astonishing battle prowess. The Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace were indeed powerful, but their strength was reflected in the fact that they had many Xian realm experts, which was enough to cover the entire Xian world. On the other hand, there were only a few dozen myth experts. Even so, it was enough to dominate the Xian world. When he was still in the mysterious realm, he had to face the encirclement of tens of thousands of mysterious realm experts, but now that he had stepped into the legendary realm, he only had to face the encirclement of dozens of legendary experts. One could well imagine the disparity between the two. In addition, as he stepped into a higher realm, those low-level legendary experts simply couldn't pose any threat to him. So, the number of enemies he had to face was getting fewer and fewer. Perhaps one day he would really be able to do something earth-shattering. This thought popped up in many people's minds. It seemed like there was only one person who had achieved such success in the past, and that was the leader of the Divine Union, who was faintly regarded as the #1 expert in the mysterious world. He was known as the most outstanding person in tens of thousands of years. Nowadays, even the reincarnated deity Jun Dingtian didn't seem to be as outstanding as him. More than 1,000 years ago, he had reached the peak of the myth realm, and over the past 1,000 years, he had improved to an unfathomable degree. It could be said that he had shaken the heavens and the earth. That was how he had forced his way out of his current predicament. Could it be that now, Yi Shiwen would also learn from him and forge a new path of invincibility? Most importantly, he was climbing on the shoulders of the Divine Union leader. If he had the chance, he wouldn't mind stepping on the corpse of the Divine Union leader. Even so, everyone was still optimistic about the Divine Union leader. He was a legendary figure. Most importantly, he had thousands of years more than Yi Shiwen. While the Divine Union leader was working hard for the last step, Yi Shiwen was still chasing after him day and night. This gap seemed to be shrinking all the time, but in fact, if the Divine Union leader took the first step and entered the Tao validation realm, then everything would be over. Any gap would be meaningless. In everyone's opinion, perhaps the only trump card on Yi Shiwen's side was the unfathomable Yimo. He had easily destroyed the clone of the Divine Union leader. Everyone was shocked by this ferocious strength. During this period of time, no one had dared to find trouble with the human race and Yi Shiwen. To a large extent, they had been intimidated by this ferocious combat power. While the outside world was talking about this matter, Yi Shiwen had already gone into closed-door training, and after a full 3 days and consuming a lot of Xiandong, he was barely able to heal his injuries. However, this was not enough. He had yet to come out of seclusion. During this period of time, it could be said that the outside world was in turmoil. Countless people were paying attention to this matter. Everyone was waiting to see what the furious divine union and heaven wasteland palace would do. Many people were not optimistic about him. If he had hidden in the human race, perhaps the divine union and heaven wasteland palace wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. However, as he left the human race, it was equivalent to exposing himself to the eyes of these two colossi. Some people even guessed that Yemo must have intervened to kill Daijibai and the giant thunder beast. Although there was no evidence, this was the most reasonable explanation. It seemed that even the divine union and heaven wasteland palace were affected by this theory and did not immediately take any drastic actions. Yi Shiwen also did not come out to explain. This misunderstanding was the best for him. With the help of divine power, his combat power soared to the 9th level of the Paong realm. The giant thunder beast and Daijibai could be considered experts, but they were completely crushed by him. However, this was not enough. It was far from enough. Although the giant thunder beast and Daijibai were powerful, they were only considered ordinary 9th level of the Paong realm. If he wanted to snatch the source of God, he would have to break out into a fierce battle with the divine union leader, the heaven wasteland palace master, and other peerless experts. Even with the help of his divine power, he might not be a match for experts of this level. At that time, the combat power of the divine union leader's doppelganger was even more tyrannical than the giant thunder beast and Daijibai. However, in the hands of Yemo, it could not last more than a few rounds and was completely crushed. This was the true peak of the mythical stage, a group of people who were infinitely close to the god. Their combat power far exceeded that of the giant thunder beast and Daijibai, who were also at the 9th level of the Paong realm. He had to go further to have a chance of snatching the source of God from these people. Therefore, he did not take action immediately. On the contrary, he paid attention to the outside information about the divine tomb while entering closed-door training. With the passage of time, the deciphering of the divine tomb had entered the final stage. Although the divine tomb was formed naturally, and all kinds of mechanisms and formations were formed naturally, the experts of the mythical realm were also extraordinary. Many of them had very powerful means. Even if it was the divine tomb, there was still a way to solve it. After Yi Shiwen killed the two experts, he kept a low profile and went into hiding. Although the divine union and the heaven wasteland palace were extremely angry, they could not do anything because they could not find Yi Shiwen's whereabouts. They could only throw themselves into the cracking of the core area of the divine tomb in full swing. At the same time, Yi Shiwen's breakthrough had also entered a critical stage. After operating the observing person scripture, he mobilized all the qi and blood in his body. The power of the giant thunder beast and Daijibai was also slowly transformed into Yi Shiwen's own power under the great technique of transformation. Even if they could not be compared with the divine union leader and the others, they were still at the 9th level of the Paong realm, which was already much more tyrannical than Yi Shiwen. After the majestic power was no longer suppressed, it instantly poured into Yi Shiwen's limbs and bones. Normally, he would not have dared to kill so recklessly. Such a huge amount of energy would cause his body to explode. However, because of the raging divine power, although his body was seriously injured, it was also nourished and transformed by the divine power. There was actually a deeper level of transformation, and he could completely withstand the raging power. This was also why he dared to directly devour the power and blood essence of the two experts at the 9th level of the Paong realm. This was the most essential part of the two experts. However, if he did not do so, he would still need a lot of time to go further and rush into the 5th level of the Paong realm in one fell swoop, even though he had already entered the peak of the 4th level of the Paong realm. However, that was the cultivation of following the rules. He had cultivated for hundreds of years, and had already far surpassed those peerless geniuses who had cultivated for 1 or 2,000 years. Naturally, he was not a person who would honestly follow the rules and cultivate. Moreover, although he had killed 2 experts at the 9th level of the Paong realm, it did not make him proud. Instead, it made him understand that the gap between him and the Divine Union leader, the Lord of the Abyss, and the others was simply unimaginable. If he did not quickly catch up and wait for them to prove their Tao, then there would be nothing left for him. In a hidden valley, Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged in the void. His body was constantly moving up and down, rising and falling. Waves of golden divinities were constantly erupting, dyeing the world into a golden ocean. In this golden ocean, in this golden kingdom, he was the only true god, the only ruler. Since he had been in seclusion for a full month, the aura on his body had finally reached a critical point. In an instant, an extremely strong power erupted from his body. Chapter 21-26. In his body, the endless blood essence and power of the legendary experts were being absorbed into his body by the Hua Gong Great Technique. Although his tyrant body did not advance to the next level, but it was also steadily advancing. More importantly, his power was steadily increasing, again and again, attacking the barrier of the 5th level of Paong realm. This barrier was lying in front of him. As long as he could cross this barrier, his cultivation would also undergo earth-shaking changes. In the Paong realm, the difference between each realm was like the clouds and mud, not to mention that as he stepped into the 5th level of Paong realm, his fighting strength could even be compared to the 7th level of Paong realm, which was the late stage of the legendary realm, those old monsters who had been practicing for thousands of years. In one fell swoop, he had truly entered the high-level ranks of the legendary experts in the mysterious world. Even among the legendary experts, he could not be regarded as an absolutely insignificant person. In his body, the blood essence was like a raging sea, surging like a flood dragon, condensed into a long river of blood, seemingly able to break through the universe, tyrannical to an unimaginable extent. In the process of attacking the barrier, waves of blood essence were consumed, but Yi Shiwen was not surprised, nor did he feel distressed. As long as he could step into the 5th level of Paong realm, then everything would be worth it. Inside Tianyuan Mirror, the Xian core was also constantly burning, forming a long river of lingqi, which poured into his body, constantly transforming into power, unceasingly surging up, unceasingly supplementing his consumed qi and blood. The poor study, the rich practice of martial arts in itself, was not something that poor people could practice. The more profound the martial arts, the more wealth it would consume. For people like Yi Shiwen, who almost came from a wild fox family, if not for all kinds of fortuitous encounters, he might still be mingling in the Zhen Wu Jie. In just a short period of time, another 1 billion Xian cores had been burned up, and the number of Xian cores he had consumed to suppress the will of the gods in his body was even more than 10 billion in a single breath, causing his wealth to shrink by more than half in one go. If others knew about this, they would probably curse this prodigal son. Even if he was a prodigal son, there would not be such a prodigal son. This made him even more determined to find the source of God in the shortest time possible. After a month's time, day and night, he had been working on the 6th heaven of Paong realm, analyzing and comprehending the realms of the 6th heaven of Paong realm. Finally, he saw some progress. Bang! A loud bang erupted from his body, turning into a golden ocean of divinity that swept in all directions. The entire valley was almost razed to the ground. Yi Shiwen, who was floating in the void, looked like a god. He looked like the sun in the sky. Immediately after, an even more majestic force directly rushed out. The barrier in his body that he had been unable to break through finally broke through in this 1 month. The energy in his body once again rose by leaps and bounds. It was as if a small stream had suddenly turned into a great river. He had made great progress. After stepping into the 5th heaven of Paong, His vision was clear and he could understand some of the obscure Tao of heaven and earth. His strength could be said to have undergone earth-shaking changes, but this force was quickly restrained by him, returning to the same level as before. On the surface there was not much difference, but only he could understand the difference inside. He was no longer the same. It could be said that there was a difference between clouds and mud. Yi Shiwen stood up slowly. After stepping into the fifth heaven of Paong realm, he could even use various methods to defeat experts at the seventh heaven of Paong realm. Coupled with the divine power hidden in his body, he was even confident that he could compete with the divine union leader and the others. No matter how strong they were only myth. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He could use divine power, which was a kind of anomaly. While he was cultivating in seclusion, everyone had made a breakthrough in the attack on the core of the god's tomb. Many myth experts had been paying attention to this matter, especially those weaker myth experts. They had been waiting there closely, because they knew very well that compared to those old monsters who had been famous for many years and had unfathomable strength, their strength was simply not enough. There was only one possibility for them to snatch the source of God and the God's shell, and that was to make the first move. Only then would there be a possibility. Otherwise, if the divine union leader and the others obtained it, there would be no way for them to get a share. Therefore, in fact, in the process of attacking the core of the divine tomb, the real powerhouses were these ordinary myth experts. On the other hand, the divine union leader, the wasteland underworld hall master, and the others did not put in much effort. They were even exploring the other tombs. After all, it was such a huge group of tombs, so any one of them would be enough to give them an extraordinary harvest. The news of the core of the divine tomb being breached suddenly spread. Just when everyone thought that there was still a gap, they suddenly succeeded and breached the large array of the core of the divine tomb. As soon as this news spread, the myth experts who were active in the divine tomb were in an uproar. Everyone immediately rushed to the core of the divine tomb. Naturally, Yi Shiwen was also one of them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The core of the divine tomb was an incomparably huge underground tomb that was formed naturally and shrouded in natural arrays. It was extremely difficult to attack. This time, it had been inexplicably opened up. Countless myth experts flew over one after another. Although the god's grave was not inferior to a small world and was very large, it was nothing for these myth experts. They tore open the space and arrived not long after they received the news. Many myth experts had gathered outside the tomb not long after. However, there was no myth expert who rushed in first, as the inside of the tomb was constantly emitting dark green smoke. This smoke was unknown, but it was very terrifying. The void had been burned by this smoke, revealing a boundless primal chaos. The smoke simply flowed into the primal chaos. However, it was also because of this that the smoke didn't spread out. Otherwise, everyone would have had to retreat very far away. Very soon, someone made a judgment. This should be the miasma of the divine tomb. This miasma was very terrifying, and even myth experts could not withstand the burning of this miasma. In just a short while they would be burnt to ashes, and not even their bones would be left. Several hours had passed, but this miasma was still constantly flowing out. Everyone was a little anxious, and powerful and violent divine senses were constantly sweeping out. These powerful myth experts were a little anxious because they knew very well that they had been moving around the core of the divine tomb and had the advantage of being close to it. However, if those tyrannical experts also got the news and rushed over, then everything would be over. How could those tyrannical experts leave behind the divine source and profound insight to them? At this time, Yi Shiwen also quietly rushed to the core of the divine tomb. Although he had been very low-key, during this period of time, Yi Shiwen, who had killed the Thunder Beast and Daiji Bai, was still the focus and core of everyone's attention. In particular, although everyone had confirmed that the two experts had most likely died in Yi Shiwen's hands, everyone was still discussing about Yi Shiwen's trump card. There were all kinds of speculations, but without exception, they all felt that it was just a flash in the pan, and it couldn't last long. Otherwise, wouldn't it be against the natural order? However, they guessed correctly this time. It was indeed impossible to use it forever, but they probably never thought that Yi Shiwen could use it again. Therefore, even if he faced thousands of troops, he was not afraid. He didn't want to be the focus of everyone's attention, but some people obviously didn't intend to let him go. "Are you that human, Yi Shiwen?" Suddenly, a muffled voice came from the void. In the surrounding space that seemed to be empty, suddenly a huge figure slowly walked out of it. All these experts were hidden in the space. Even if it was difficult to hide from the perception of others, they still chose to hide. Yi Shiwen saw that he had been discovered. So, he didn't act pretentious. He took a step forward and walked out of his hiding place. He looked around, and saw that it was an incomparably huge giant whose entire body seemed to be cast in bronze. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes when he sensed the aura on his body. It was Titan. The majestic aura on his body made Yi Shiwen's distant and dusty memories resurface. This was the aura of the Titan. The second god had been defeated by Yi Shiwen in the past. He possessed the bloodline of the Titan. It was also a special bloodline in the human race. It was called the Titan's body. It was obvious that his ancestors possessed the Titan's bloodline, and had inherited this special bloodline. However, the person in front of him was different. The Titan's bloodline in his body was very rich. In fact, it was far stronger than the Titan's body. The second god, that battle had left a deep impression on Yi Shiwen. It was the first time that he had fallen into such a bitter battle. Moreover, he had encountered the most powerful opponent of the body cultivator when his tyrant body hadn't reached the great accomplishment stage. It could be said that both sides had suffered in that battle. However, he had come out on top in the end, and had obtained the final victory. Therefore, he had a deep understanding of this legendary and powerful race that could challenge the dragon race. According to the rumors, the purebred Titan had gone extinct many years ago. The person in front of him might not be a Titan, but he probably possessed the bloodline of a Titan. Therefore, he couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the second god. Chapter 21-27. That guy. Is he a Titan? He is indeed a Titan. The aura on his body and his tall figure. Yes, he is a Titan. Moreover, he is not an ordinary Titan. He is an aristocrat among the Titans. Yes, he should be a bronze Titan. It is rumored that although the Titan clan is divided into many clans, the aristocrats among them are all bronze Titans, silver Titans, and golden Titans. Among them, the golden Titans are the rarest. Every golden Titan is an invincible tyrannical master. It can be said that they are invincible among their peers. It is rare for them to meet a worthy opponent. Although the bronze Titans are not as good as the golden Titans, they are also considered the aristocrats of the Titan clan. They can be said to be extremely tyrannical. This is interesting. The Titans that have disappeared for a long time have actually appeared. Moreover, they are the aristocrats of the Titan clan. Although they are not as good as the bronze Titans, I am afraid that there are not many among us who can be a match for them. Everyone suddenly started discussing. Even these experts who had cultivated to the mythical realm were very curious about this legendary race. The Titan clan was also one of the most tyrannical races in the ancient times. They were one of the few races that could directly compete with the Dragon clan. Any Titan would be an extremely powerful expert the moment they were born, especially bronze Titans. They were nobles among the Titans. They did not need to cultivate much to reach the peak of the mythical stage. All they lacked was time. Once the bronze Titans reached adulthood, they would reach the peak of the mythical realm. If they had the opportunity, it would be a piece of cake for them to prove their Tao. The Silver Titans, which were rumored to be a level higher than the Bronze Titans, were even rarer. As long as they reached adulthood, they would have the strength to prove their Tao. They were born with God-level strength. How terrifying was this race! Not to mention the legendary Golden Titans. They were born with God-level strength. When they reached adulthood, they would become invincible masters among the gods. These were the races that existed in the ancient times. Compared to those fierce races that existed in the fierce era, these were far from enough. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He had also heard about the legends of the Titans. After all, the second god had made a lot of preparations in order to deal with the Titan's body. Many of them were myths and legends. However, it could be seen from those myths and legends that the Titan race was extremely dreadful. He had almost lost his life in that bloody battle back then. Yi Shiwen's tyrant body hadn't reached the great accomplishment level at that time. The second god would have been killed on the spot if he had been in the same realm as Yi Shiwen now. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The might of his tyrant body had been enhanced by many times. Yi Shiwen was sure that he would dare to exchange blows with the legendary Golden Titan even if he were to encounter it. Of course, that was under the circumstances that they were in the same realm. However, it was rumored that the Golden Titan was already at the Tao confirming level when it was born. Yi Shiwen was afraid that he wouldn't be its opponent even if he encountered a newborn baby. However, Golden Titans were legends even among the Titans. There might not even be one or two of them in hundreds of thousands of years. What, you know me? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. There were so many legendary masters in the nearby world. However, he hadn't heard of the powerful existence of the Titan race. It seemed that it was very likely that he had come from a distant world. Otherwise, everyone wouldn't be so surprised. However, this was not surprising since the divine tombs had been opened. I've heard a few people mention you. They all praised you to the skies. However, it turns out that you're just SOSO. I'm really disappointed, said the Bronze Titan coldly with a very disappointed look. I thought that a hero had also appeared among the humans. However, it turns out that you're just SOSO. Who did you hear that from? Although the Bronze Titan's tone was quite disdainful, Yi Shiwen didn't bother to pay attention to it. However, he was quite interested in the person who mentioned him. I heard Qin Lai mention you. He is considered a character. I thought that you should be good since he mentioned you. However, it seems that you're just SOSO, said the Bronze Titan without hesitation, yawning like a toad. What a big tone. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes, crossed his arms, and said coldly, Tell me your name. Since you mentioned Qin Lai, I promise I won't beat you to death. Ha, what a joke! The Bronze Titan suddenly became furious. With a bang, his voice was deafening like a large bell. He had always been respected wherever he went. When had he been looked down upon? I see that you're quite capable. I heard that you've also defeated humans with our Titan bloodline. If you look down on the Titan race because of this, then you're gravely mistaken. Humans with our bloodline are just hybrids with impure bloodlines. They're far inferior to us pure-blooded Titans. Many people around gasped. From the words of the Bronze Titan in front of them, he was actually a pure-blooded Titan. Oh my God, wasn't it said that the ancient race had become extinct? How could there still be a pure-blooded Titan? It was simply unimaginable. Having a bloodline and a pure-blooded creature were not the same thing. One was a pure-blooded creature, and the other was a subspecies. There was no comparison at all, especially for those powerful races that dominated ancient times. For them, the purer the bloodline, the stronger the strength. How could they not have noticed such a tyrannical existence before? Especially a pure-blooded Titan. It was absolutely impossible for them to ignore it. I'm looking down on you. So what? You're just a little kid who hasn't even reached adulthood. You're actually imitating adults to talk. What a joke. Yi Shiwen's face suddenly pulled down and he said rudely. Many people around couldn't help but laugh when they heard Yi Shiwen's words. As long as the Bronze Titan reached adulthood, it would be the peak of the mythical realm. As long as there was a chance, it could prove itself. The chances of proving itself far exceeded ordinary people. Even if it didn't cultivate, it would be the peak of the mythical realm when it reached adulthood. On the other hand, if it hadn't cultivated to the peak of the mythical realm, didn't it mean that it hadn't reached adulthood? Although it might be thousands of years old, in Yi Shiwen's eyes, it was still a little kid who hadn't reached adulthood at all. Thinking of this, many people couldn't help but laugh. The Bronze Titan was so angry that its face turned red. It formed a sharp contrast with its copper-green body. Boom! The Bronze Titan finally attacked under its anger. It attacked directly in an instant. In the void, it directly clawed out countless storms. It was rumored that every Titan was a child of the storm. They had the power to control storms. They were almost born to control storms. Ordinary people might need to go through various kinds of cultivation to control the laws of the wind attribute. However, they were born with the power to control storms. It was far beyond the scope of ordinary people's understanding. When the Bronze Titan made its move, Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that the spirit energy around his body had stopped flowing. Everything had been sealed off. He could even feel that his breathing had been controlled. This was the power of the innate ability to control storms. His huge palm shot out and instantly turned into a storm that filled the sky. It was a huge storm that tore the space apart. It shattered everything in sight and tore towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had once seen the second god's ability to control storms. However, that was only a preliminary ability. So, the difference between the second god and this Bronze Titan was like the difference between clouds and mud. They weren't in the same realm. Sharp-tongued human, when you go to hell, repent to the Grim Reaper for your sin of insulting the noble Titan. The cold voice of the Bronze Titan came from the storm. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen as soon as he attacked. He showed strength that was far beyond the ordinary masters of the 7th level of Paong realm. It was precisely because he had such strength that he was really disappointed when he saw that Yi Shiwen was only at the 5th level of Paong realm. Go to hell? I'd like to see who in the world wants to go to hell. Yi Shiwen's big hand clawed towards the void. He grabbed a golden long sword and directly slashed down. Bang! An incomparably loud collision sound was heard. The long sword and the big hand hidden in the storm fiercely collided with each other. It was like the sound of gold and iron colliding, and actually caused sparks to fly in all directions. Humph! You want to hurt me with a mere sword condensed from divine thoughts? You're still far from it. The big hand of the Bronze Titan suddenly clawed and directly crushed Yi Shiwen's sword-intent long sword. Then, the big hand suddenly slammed down towards Yi Shiwen, slamming down towards the position where Yi Shiwen was standing. It seemed as if everything would collapse under the slap. Whoosh! At that critical moment, Yi Shiwen directly moved to the side and retreated 100 miles away to avoid this claw attack. You can run quite well. However, it's useless. In front of my absolute strength, you can't be my opponent. Go and repent to the Grim Reaper for your sins. His voice hadn't even faded when another big hand suddenly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen, who had already moved horizontally to grab him. You have some strength. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. He was not the slightest bit nervous. However, he was a little surprised in his heart. Although his long sword was condensed, it was comparable to the incomparably sharp magic weapons. It could even compete with those magic weapons. Now, it was directly grabbed by the Bronze Titan with one hand. It was enough to show that the Bronze Titan's physical body was indeed extraordinary. It was far from being comparable to the second god who only had some Titan blood. But that's all there is to it. If this is the source of your arrogance, then let me break it. Chapter 21-28. How arrogant! The Bronze Titan's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. His fighting spirit soared to the sky, and his blood was boiling. I will let you know how big the gap is between your bloodline and my noble bloodline. I was born 10,000 times nobler than you. Unlike Yi Shiwen, the Bronze Titan was born a noble among the Titans. He was born to surpass the vast majority of races. He had talents and resources that far exceeded these races. He was powerful and wealthy beyond the comprehension of these ordinary lives. Boom! The surroundings of the Bronze Titan instantly turned into a sea of storms. The turquoise storm engulfed everything and swallowed everything. The entire process looked extremely terrifying. Whoosh! He took a step forward and crossed the sky. He didn't seem to be very fast, but the aura he exuded was unbreakable. They could only wait for him to kill them. A sinister smile appeared on his face. He didn't care about Yi Shiwen at all. He could even see the expression on Yi Shiwen's face. He roared. The space around him was shattered by the storm. At this moment, he was like an ancient titan that had come back to life. He had created a kingdom that belonged to the Titan King. This was the race that once belonged to the King of Godly Kings. In this world, he was the true ruler. Suddenly, a black spear appeared in his hand. Like a black dragon, it swept across the sky and smashed everything in its path as it slashed down. Yi Shiwen was not to be outdone. A long saber had already appeared in his hand. It instantly shattered many planes, and the chaos poured out in torrents. Boom! An incomparably loud collision sound rang out, and a huge mushroom cloud slowly rose up. The first exchange had caused the sky to collapse. The tomb of the gods plain, which had already begun to become unstable, showed faint signs of collapse. Both of them took a few steps back. It seemed like they were evenly matched. Both of them were competing purely with their physical bodies. There weren't too many magical powers or martial arts. They were just relying on their powerful physical bodies to fight each other head-on. Whether it was the Bronze Titan or Yi Shiwen, their physical bodies were unbelievably powerful. Especially for the onlookers, it had reached an unimaginable level. Both of them retreated again and again. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had unloaded all the strength of his body. He burst into loud laughter. It's said that the Titan clan has an unparalleled body. But it seems that it's just so. Your realm is far superior to mine. But you still can't win. Everyone nodded in agreement. It was indeed so. No matter how one looked at it, it was exceptionally terrifying. Whether it was Yi Shiwen or the Bronze Titan, their physical cultivation attainments were far beyond everyone's imagination. If the Bronze Titan was a natural external cultivation expert, then he was a noble among the Titans. The Bronze Titan was born with an invincible physical body. What kind of physique does Yi Shiwen have? How can it be so tyrannical? Everyone had heard about Yi Shiwen's tyrannical physique before, but no one really knew how tyrannical it was. And they didn't have enough reference points to compare it with. But now, with the Bronze Titan as a comparison, everything seemed to be fully revealed. Yi Shiwen could actually be compared with the Bronze Titan, who was 2 realms higher than him. It was conceivable that his physical body was far beyond the Bronze Titan's level. Humph! The Bronze Titan sneered. The spear in his hand suddenly clanged. There were still faint cracks left by the ancient war on it that could not be repaired. All of these indicated that this spear had a long history that ordinary people couldn't imagine. It was infinitely powerful. It might even be an artifact. Swoosh! The spear's momentum did not decrease. It cut through the sky like a dragon and went straight to Yi Shiwen's face. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. The emergence immortal exterminating saber in his hand directly slashed out an astonishing light. It slashed down fiercely and collided with the spear. Bang! Both of them retreated again and again. It seemed that they were evenly matched again. The Bronze Titan is just so. How dare you look down on me? I can kill you in the same realm as me, Yi Shiwen said confidently. The observing person's scripture in his body rotated slightly, and the feeling of numbness caused by the violent collision had been completely eliminated. Everyone was in an uproar. There were many heroes in the world. However, how many people dared to say that they could easily kill a bronze titan in the same realm as if they were taking something out of their pocket? Perhaps there was no one else besides Yi Shiwen. What's more, in everyone's opinion, Yi Shiwen was not boasting. Everyone had some understanding of Yi Shiwen's trial now. He was able to completely compete with the Bronze Titan at the 5th level of Paong realm. Such a battle record was enough to shock the heavens. The Bronze Titan strode out and shattered the vacuum. His whole body rushed out like a green figure. It was abnormally terrifying. The huge aura was like a huge mountain, rushing towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! The Bronze Titan and Yi Shiwen fought again. The fighting methods of the two were not very beautiful. It was completely simple and crude. They relied on their physical bodies to forcefully eat each other. Ordinary people could not withstand such violent fighting methods at all. Although the Bronze Titan seemed to have the upper hand, he was already a little anxious deep down. Speaking of which, his cultivation realm was higher than Yi Shiwen's. He already had the upper hand, but he still couldn't defeat Yi Shiwen. This was simply a great humiliation. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged thousands, tens of thousands of blows in the sky. Their speed was extremely fast. In front of their extremely tyrannical physical bodies, any laws, rules, or domains were useless. I won't play with you anymore. I'll die. The two of them separated, and the Bronze Titan finally looked serious. His body had already turned into a country of storms, completely protecting him within. The bronze-colored spear in his hand directly blasted out in one fell swoop. His entire person was like the incarnation of a god of war, breaking through everything and directly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's aura shield had been completely broken in an instant. Storm Spear. Everyone was completely taken aback when they saw the Bronze Titan's means. This is the legendary fatal loss technique of the Titan clan, Storm Spear. This technique completely condenses the power of the storm they control into the spear, erupting with earth-shattering power. It is said that powerful titans relied on the storm spear to fight the gods alone. Many people were secretly surprised. That terrifying power almost made them feel a shocking threat. If they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, how would they deal with such a threat? And at this moment, something that many people didn't expect happened. Facing the storm spear that was directly slashing down, Yi Shiwen didn't move at all. He didn't move at all. In an instant, he directly reached out with one hand and grabbed it. Bang! Yi Shiwen's hand directly broke through the spear light that filled the sky. After it went in directly, he grabbed the body of the spear. Clang! An incomparably huge roar resounded. It sounded as if two huge pieces of metal had collided with each other. The dreadful counterforce rippled directly on both of them. In particular, Yi Shiwen was constantly being pushed back. That powerful force bombarded the divinities on his body. It was on the verge of exploding, and at this moment, a powerful aura rushed out of Yi Shiwen's body and turned into the state of the 5 emperors. There was also an extremely tyrannical power of the fist incarnation directly integrated into Yi Shiwen's body. Boom! 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 The aura in Yi Shiwen's body continued to rise, as if it was endless. It was constantly rising at every moment. He suddenly clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and the fist force directly rushed out. He struck with monstrous chi and directly blasted on the spear. Clang! The spear was directly hit away, and the hands of the Bronze Titan suddenly exploded. What? This Yi Shiwen is actually so powerful. He can even withstand the storm's spear so easily. What kind of magical power is that battle suit on his body? Why do I have a feeling that it is unfathomable? Is it condensed using the power of the 5 elements? I seem to have heard of this 5 elements battlesuit before. It is the Five Elements battlesuit. In the past, there was a peerless master, the Five Elements Supreme. He seemed to have cultivated such a technique. Yes, I remember now. Yi Shiwen's Five Emperors battlesuit had basically never been seen through before. However, most of the people present were mythical masters. Many of them were old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. They could definitely be said to be experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally, they were extraordinary. How is this possible? The Bronze Titan couldn't believe it. His storm spear was directly shaken away. How could Yi Shiwen's strength increase so much all of a sudden? Could it be that he didn't use his full strength at all just now? Previously, he was only fighting with his physical strength. It was more than enough to defeat ordinary masters of the same level, but he couldn't gain the upper hand in Yi Shiwen's hands. However, it was absolutely impossible to erupt such a completely different level of combat power at once. Do you still not understand? I was just practicing just now. Now I'm going to be serious. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly. He was naturally satisfied with his performance just now. After the baptism of divine power, his physical body was a level higher. It was even more ferocious than the original gilded tyrant form. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to compete with the Bronze Titan, who was good at physical strength, while being 2 realms lower than him. Chapter 21-29. Practice? The Bronze Titan's face suddenly became abnormally ugly. He was actually being looked down upon, and it was to such an extent. This was no longer looking down on him. It was simply looking down on him. Even if he didn't use all his strength, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. It was such a mentality that made the Bronze Titan, who had always been arrogant, furious. It would be fine if Yi Shiwen was a peerless genius who had been famous for many years in his eyes. However, which village did this Yi Shiwen come from? If he hadn't heard from Qin Lai, he wouldn't have known where this guy came from. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. If he hadn't wanted to verify what level he had reached just now, how could he have been so rash? In terms of his physical body, he was almost invincible. He could defeat experts of the same realm with his physical body alone. It was also because of this that basically no one could confront him physically. In addition, he had cleansed his physical body with divine power and improved further. Only this Bronze Titan could compete with him in this aspect. This was a rare opportunity, so he gave it a try. Boom! As he spoke, the aura on Yi Shiwen's body changed again. It was like a high mountain rising from the ground. His aura suddenly rose by a lot. He blasted out a punch. The fist intent of this punch directly turned into a city. The entire city was shrouded in surging red dust, directly cleansing the mortal world. It blasted towards the Bronze Titan on the spot. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. This was the only human path fist that he had learned among the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. When the 6 Paths of Reincarnation were combined, it was an absolute set of supreme Emperor-level unique skills. However, on the other hand, it could also be separated into 6 sets of fist technique. Any set of fist techniques could also be called a top-notch god-level unique skill. Yi Shiwen had only roughly mastered it, but its power was already amazing. Under the activation of his fist technique incarnation, it erupted with shocking power. Boom! In an instant, the storm around the Bronze Titan collapsed. The storm world that he had painstakingly created collapsed in an instant. It couldn't stop Yi Shiwen's human path fist at all. He was blasted away. His whole body was exploding. That was the damage inflicted on him by the surging red dust of the human path fist. This surging red dust was the will of the human race. With so many human wills condensed, it was almost equivalent to heaven's will. Who could compete with heaven's will? This was the profound meaning of human path fist. Yi Shiwen only had a rough grasp of it at present. He had only managed to blast out the holy city of the human race. However, He would be able to blast out the holy city of the human race once he went a step further and attained a higher level of mastery. This was the true power of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The bronze titan fell to the ground and smashed a large crater. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood that contained golden divinity. He had already evolved to become a god. Even when he was born, his physical body was already close to that of a demigod. He could not be mentioned in the same breath as an ordinary mortal. How is this possible? It's just according to plan. No matter how weak the bronze titan is, it shouldn't be unable to withstand even one move. How is this possible? I don't believe it. Was Yi Shiwen really just practicing? Otherwise, how could he be so tyrannical? How is this possible? The bronze titan is the one who has the advantage in terms of realm strength. How could it be the other way around? Everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe it. This was simply a miracle, a complete miracle. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen in a completely different way. With his strength, even those guys at the 8th level of Paong realm should be able to contend with him. No wonder there were rumors that he killed the Thunder Behemoth and Daijibai. Although many people didn't believe it at first, they could only believe it when they saw it with their own eyes. Although they still didn't know what method he used, they began to believe that he might have done it himself. It wasn't like many people guessed that he borrowed Yi Mo's power. Roar. At this moment, the bronze titan, who was thought to have been defeated, suddenly leaped up. An earth-shattering titan power swept out from his body. The power of the green storm contained golden divine power. He burned the blood in his body, and his entire body instantly transformed into the titan real body. He suddenly became very huge. His entire body flew into the air. He looked extremely terrifying. Wheel of Storm. After he let out a loud roar, countless storm powers condensed behind him, condensing into an incomparably huge wheel. The entire wheel slowly rotated, causing the entire world to sink into an ocean of storm powers. All other powers were expelled, layer by layer, crushing the entire space. This was a huge and incomparable power, even more terrifying than his original strength. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. How could he not see that this should be the Bronze Titan's final trump card? This was his final counterattack. Without hesitation, he took a step forward and directly crossed the heavens. He went up, and the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram appeared in his hand. The power of the 5 elements began to rotate, and in an instant, endless power of the 5 elements was shaken out. In the void, it turned into a powerful torrent, and directly blasted the body of the Wheel of Storm. Boom! There was a huge roar, and the Wheel of Storm erupted with amazing power under the power of the 5 elements. However, it had just begun to counterattack, and it was directly broken. It wasn't Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. The Bronze Titan directly screamed, and his Wheel of Storm directly exploded in the air. The wind attribute energy and laws that were condensed by his Wheel of Storm all scattered in an instant. His strongest attack was completely broken by Yi Shiwen before it could show the power that it should have. Even Yi Shiwen was a little shocked by the power that came from his bloodline. Hence, he decided that he must absolutely not release such power. Many legendary experts who were carefully watching the battle from the sidelines were completely shocked. After Yi Shiwen had used his true strength, from the beginning to the end, it had been a downright crushing battle. This Bronze Titan was very tyrannical. Although he was beaten up so badly by Yi Shiwen, many old monsters who were also at the 7th level of the Paong realm were also secretly shocked. If that Bronze Titan's opponent was them, then they would probably not be much better off than the current Bronze Titan. It wasn't that his opponent was too weak. It could only be said that Yi Shiwen was too abnormal. It was simply far beyond their imagination. How could a 5th-level Paong realm expert erupt with such terrifying power? Many people had previously thought of helping the Divine Union and the Heaven-Desolate Palace to capture Yi Shiwen, but now they had completely extinguished this idea. It was too dangerous to have such thoughts in front of such a tyrannical Yi Shiwen. This bronze titan's face was pale. He could no longer maintain his titan true body and returned to his original appearance. His storm wheel had been broken, and it had also greatly injured his vitality, directly injuring his vitality. A look of shock flickered in his eyes. He didn't look down on Yi Shiwen anymore. What Qin Lai had said was right. Yi Shiwen was indeed terrifying. However, he still wasn't willing to give up. He believed that he would have been able to turn the situation around if he had been able to unleash the storm dermic wheel. After all, that was his trump card. It was impossible for him to lose to Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen didn't even give him this opportunity. Damn it! Despicable! Despicable? If you were in my shoes, would you have given me the opportunity to release it? Yi Shiwen sneered. The bronze titan immediately stopped talking. If he were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, he would have made the same choice. He definitely wouldn't have allowed Yi Shiwen to use such a dangerous move. The mountains will never change, and the rivers will always flow. We will still have a chance to meet again, the bronze titan said coldly. You want to leave? Did I say that I allowed you to leave? Yi Shiwen sneered. What do you think this place is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? What else do you want? The bronze titan shouted. Don't tell me you want to kill me? So what if I want to kill you? Just stay here obediently. He had never been merciful to those who wanted to harm him. Although the Titan clan was terrifying, this bronze titan had an unforgettable hatred for him. He was afraid that there would be trouble if he let him go. So, it was better to end the trouble here. Yi Shiwen's big hand suddenly grabbed the bronze titan. He had never been merciful to anyone who wanted to harm him. How dare you! The bronze titan was shocked and angry. He blasted out with his spear and directly shattered Yi Shiwen's big hand that was grabbing him. Such a situation had never happened before. In the past, even if he was defeated, even the most vicious enemy would not be ruthless because of the Titan clan's reputation. After all, no one could bear the anger of the Titan clan. Although the Bronze Titan was not as rare as the Silver Titan and the Gold Titan, he was also the nobility of the Titan clan. He was also the main force of the Titan clan. If he died, it would definitely cause the Titan clan's absolute anger. So what? If you want to kill me, you must be prepared to pay the price. Yi Shiwen shouted and began to pinch a seal. Rippling mountain seal. At this time, the Bronze Titan's eyes flickered with horror. He could feel an extremely dangerous feeling from the seal floating in front of Yi Shiwen. Inverting ocean seal. At this time, the Bronze Titan did not dare to delay. He took out a huge scroll and crushed it. A huge portal appeared in the sky. Overturning sky seal. Chapter 2130. He had already condensed the sky flipping seal, but Yi Shiwen had no intention of releasing it. It was conceivable that he was still condensing an even more terrifying move. How could this Bronze Titan not know? He did not hesitate. Although he was unwilling, the situation was stronger than him after all. He had to bow his head when he was under the eaves. He immediately jumped and escaped into the teleportation portal. 3 seals in 1. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes, and a terrifying aura erupted from him. In the void, the 3 seals directly merged together. It was as if a piece of heaven and earth directly blasted down, and fiercely blasted towards the Bronze Titan in the portal. Boom! A huge mushroom cloud rose from the teleportation portal. Yi Shiwen's 3 seals in 1 directly crossed the distance of space and time, and chased after it. Ah! The teleportation portal was blasted and collapsed. The originally stable teleportation portal collapsed all at once. The Bronze Titan's miserable scream came from the other side of the teleportation portal. Everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. Judging from the scale of this blow, he would probably lose a layer of skin even if he did not die. Yi Shiwen, you will die a horrible death. At the moment when the portal collapsed, the angry roar of the Bronze Titan could be heard. The space that was blasted by the terrifying blow was slowly healing under the effect of the space law. Yi Shiwen sighed. In the end, he still failed to kill this disaster. He was afraid that there would be a lot of trouble in the future. The Bronze Titan itself was the nobility of the Titan clan. As long as they reached adulthood, they would be at the peak of the mythical stage. There was a great chance that they would be able to prove themselves in the future. It could be said to be a very big trouble. However, there was no other way now that things had come to this. After all, the other party came to him. It was impossible for him to surrender and wait for death. He could only fight back with all his might. However, he was not too worried. Even if it was the unknown Titan clan in the depths of the plain, so what? As long as he had enough strength, even the Titan clan could not do anything to him. This was a world where strength was supreme. The Titan clan had a great reputation. It could scare everyone, but it could not scare him. This Bronze Titan had been heavily injured by him, and it probably wouldn't be able to cause trouble for him in a short period of time, so it could be considered that he hadn't wasted his efforts. However, this attack had exhausted a large portion of his true essence. Coupled with the initial consumption, he practically didn't have much true essence left. It was also impossible for him to maintain the 5 Emperors enhancement and the Fist Path incarnation. In an instant, he had returned to his original form and returned to the state of the 5th heaven of Paong realm. Even so, he could feel that the divine thoughts of those hidden mythical realm experts around him were no longer as blatant as they used to be. Originally, among these myth realm experts, his experience was shallow and he could be said to be a junior. Naturally, these people wouldn't think too highly of him. But the battle just now had completely changed their opinion of him. Who would dare to treat him as a junior? Although he wasn't at the peak of existence yet, it was only a matter of time. As long as he was given enough time, he would definitely grow to an earth-shattering level one day. Apart from the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace, who else would be willing to provoke a rising star who was already very strong and had even greater potential in the future? Yi Shiwen? Not waiting for Yi Shiwen to rest, a somewhat questioning and unusually cold voice came from the void. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, a figure slowly appeared in front of the crowd. It was a young man with an aura that seemed to be above the 9 heavens. He was like a rock that soared 90,000 miles into the sky. His gaze was as sharp as an eagle's, and his body carried an endless majesty. All of his power condensed into a vast aura that enveloped Yi Shiwen in an instant. The leader of the Divine Union. Yi Shiwen forcefully withstood the crushing aura and spat out this person's name word by word. That's right. This person was the leader of the Divine Union, who was widely recognized as the #1 expert in the Xian world. He was known as the #1 expert below the Dao validation realm. In the era when deities didn't appear, he was recognized as the #1 expert in the nearby worlds. Thousands of years ago, he had risen like a shooting star and established the Divine Union, a powerful organization that was famous all over the world. He had allowed the Divine Union to be mentioned in the same breath as the Heaven Wasteland Palace, the Heavenly Cloud City, and other overlords. He had single-handedly brought the Divine Union to this stage. He could be considered a peerless and ambitious person. More importantly, this huge Divine Union had actually only served him to become a deity. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He was indeed an outstanding and extraordinary person. The clone embodiment he had used previously couldn't be compared to his main body, so it couldn't have given him such immense pressure. Furthermore, He hadn't felt much pressure from the Divine Union's clone embodiment before it had been destroyed by Yemo. However, Yemo was no longer around, so he could only rely on himself. "You are very bold," the Divine Union leader said faintly. There was complete silence all around. No one even dared to release their spirit consciousness. No one had the right to be arrogant in front of the number one expert in the mysterious world. This was the true trump card that allowed the Divine Union to stand proudly in the mysterious world. The Divine Union had only been established for a few thousand years, so it naturally couldn't be compared to the tyrannical Heaven Wasteland Palace, which was a colossus that had dominated the mysterious world for countless years. However, it had been able to become a publicly recognized peerless overlord by relying on such a tyrannical person, an existence that was invincible in the known world. Even someone as powerful as the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master had to admit that the Divine Union leader seemed to be slightly stronger. Even though they were both mythical experts, they couldn't help but revere him like a god. "You are very similar to me, but it's a pity that your opponent is me," the Divine Union leader added. Everyone was stunned. Many people had compared Yi Shiwen to the Divine Union leader of many years ago. However, this was only the opinion of many bystanders. It seemed like comparing Yi Shiwen to the Divine Union leader of many years ago was the first time the Divine Union leader had admitted it. Perhaps it would also be the last time. No one believed that he would be able to escape after being targeted by the Divine Union leader. Indeed, if Yi Shiwen hadn't offended the Divine Union leader, perhaps he would have grown to an earth-shattering level one day and become comparable to the current Divine Union leader. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and said, "Although I didn't choose this, but no one knows who the real winner is until the very end, right?" "Good, good, good." The Divine Union leader repeated the word "good" 3 times. He wasn't mocking Yi Shiwen for his miraculous return, but he was genuinely admiring him. "You are indeed very good. You have an invincible belief and great luck. Your future achievements will be limitless, but it's a pity that you will fall here today. That person called Yemo isn't with you, right?" Yi Shiwen immediately understood that the Divine Union leader had said so much to him but hadn't attacked him directly because he was afraid of Yemo's existence. As for Yi Shiwen, the Divine Union leader probably didn't care about him at all. "Why don't you guess?" Yi Shiwen chuckled. "It seems like he really isn't around," the Divine Union leader said faintly. "Originally, I wanted to get rid of him as well. He destroyed one of my clones, so I can't pretend that nothing happened. However, I'll get rid of you first before I get rid of him." The person he was truly afraid of was Yemo. He simply didn't care about Yi Shiwen, so he was just going to get rid of him in passing. He suddenly opened his eyes and revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Brat, you actually dare to delay for time to recover." Everyone was in an uproar. They hadn't expected Yi Shiwen to be so daring. He had actually used the Divine Union leader to confirm whether Yemo was around to buy time for him to recover. Although he had crushed the Divine Union leader from the start to the end, he had still fought a 7th-level Pawang Realm expert with a 5th-level Pawang Realm cultivation. He must have used some special techniques, so it was normal for him to consume more energy. You guessed it? Good eyesight. Yi Shiwen was also a little surprised. The Divine Union leader was indeed worthy of his title as the #1 expert in the mysterious world. He was indeed extraordinary. "You are the first to dare play tricks in front of me. However, it's useless. So what if you recover to your peak? That little bit of skill of yours isn't enough in front of me." The Divine Union leader sneered as he suddenly made a move. Boom! A torrential might crushed down in an instant and increased by 100 times. This was the power of a peak mythical realm expert. Compared to the Divine Union leader, Dai Jibai and the Thunder Beast that Yi Shiwen had killed weren't even worth mentioning. It could even be said that they weren't on the same level at all. He finally understood why Daijibai had been willing to be the deputy union leader, given his strength. It was because he wasn't on the same level as the divine union leader. Yi Shiwen only felt a frightening force appear around his body and lock him down firmly. Even the space around him had solidified, so he couldn't move at all. He watched as the divine union leader's huge palm in the sky got closer and closer, as if it was going to smash the sky into pieces. He simply couldn't escape. Everyone had already sentenced Yi Shiwen to death in their hearts. If they were in his shoes, they wouldn't be able to escape either. However, at this critical moment, an astonishing divine power erupted from Yi Shiwen's body. It soared into the sky, and directly smashed that dreadful power into pieces. The demon wings behind him suddenly stretched out, and his entire body moved hundreds of miles horizontally, and barely avoided this fatal blow. Boom! A huge, bottomless hole was formed. It was filled with boundless darkness. Chapter 21:31. The nomological laws had been shattered. In the face of the divine union leader's true strength, everything seemed so fragile and insignificant. The title of the number one expert below the gods was not undeserved. However, what surprised everyone was that, at the most critical moment, Yi Shiwen had managed to break free from the divine union leader's lock and escape. Even an ordinary expert at the 9th level of the Paong realm wouldn't necessarily be able to do this. Interesting, but it's time to end this. The divine union leader was unmoved. In the next second, he had already moved horizontally in front of Yi Shiwen. His speed had reached the pinnacle in the blink of an eye. From afar, it seemed as if he had moved together with Yi Shiwen. Their movements were almost synchronized, and it was obvious how powerful the divine union leader was. A powerful pressure was firmly locked on his body, as if a powerful force was pouring and crushing him. Yi Shiwen was about to unleash his divine power to fight the divine union leader to the death. However, he suddenly caught a glimpse of the hole that was constantly spewing miasma out of the corner of his eye. He suddenly smiled and said, "I won't play with you anymore. Come in if you have the ability." Yi Shiwen stomped his feet and his body turned into a stream of light, rushing directly towards the hole in the core of the divine tomb. "Don't even think about it," the divine union leader bellowed. Just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly saw an even more terrifying martial path torrent descend from the sky and transform into a monstrous fist pressure that came crashing down. Boom! The entire sky was blasted into fragments, and the place where Yi Shiwen had flown out was already smashed into pieces. In the next second, Yi Shiwen's figure appeared in the distance with a grave expression on his face. He had almost been turned into ashes by this punch. In the void, a domineering figure descended from the sky. It was a middle-aged man, his entire body was covered in long hair, and he looked like an ape-man. He was tall and strong, a domineering figure. "Heaven Wasteland Temple Master!" Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes. The two main characters had arrived. Although this was the first time he had seen the Sky Desolate Underworld Hall Master, it didn't mean that he didn't know what the Sky Desolate Underworld Hall Master looked like. The Divine Union leader had also recognized him immediately. In the entire Xian world, apart from the leader of the Divine Union, the only person who had a deep hatred for him and had absolute confidence in killing him was probably the Heaven Wasteland Hall Master. Now, even if they encountered the giant Thunder Beast and Daijibai again, they would still be able to protect themselves even if they didn't use their divine power. The disparity between them and the Divine Union leaders was just too great. The two great experts surrounded Yi Shiwen. Even the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master kept his mouth shut and was too lazy to say anything to Yi Shiwen. There was only a monstrous hatred in his eyes, unlike the Divine Union who had only lost a deputy Union Master. The giant Thunder Beast had roamed the world with him since he was young. Although they were master and servant, they were like brothers. Now that the giant thunder beast had died in Yi Shiwen's hands, how could he not hate Yi Shiwen? He simply hated Yi Shiwen to the core and only hoped to send Yi Shiwen to hell as soon as possible. Hiss, the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master, has also come after the Divine Union leader. This is bad. Even if Yi Shiwen has monstrous abilities, he won't be able to escape from the two of them. I'm afraid he won't be able to escape this time. I originally thought that he would soar to the sky in the future and have the power of a Kuanping. Who would have thought that he would be so unlucky to encounter two great enemies here? If he was given more time, he might be able to match them. Unfortunately, I'm afraid he's going to die now. He's an outstanding talent of his generation. In other words, it was already very unwise for him to choose to come here. He clearly knew that these two experts would definitely come, yet he still came. Did he think that he could take advantage of the time difference and settle the matter in one fell swoop before the two of them received the news? This is a gamble. Unfortunately, the gamble has failed and he will have to pay the price with his own life. In many people's opinion, Yi Shiwen had personally come despite knowing that the two great experts were coming. He was either crazy or planning to seize the divine source in one fell swoop before the two of them received the news. It was a pity that he didn't succeed in the end. Both the leader of the Divine Union and the Wasteland Temple Master had arrived much earlier than everyone had expected. It seems like your good luck ends here, the Divine Union leader said indifferently. It seems like there's no other way. We have to fight. Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. He wasn't flustered by the arrival of the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master. He was rather calm, which made people admire him. He wasn't as nervous or afraid as others thought he was. On the contrary, he even heaved a sigh of relief. In the mysterious world, apart from the first-rate forces, there were 10 great experts who were above many mythical experts. The Divine Union leader was the leader of the 10 great experts, while the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master was ranked third. Apart from them, there were also 8 extremely powerful existences at the peak of the Paong realm. They had also arrived, but they hadn't arrived at the first instance. Initially, he had imagined that the worst situation would be to face the encirclement of the 10 great experts at the same time. Everyone in the abyss wanted it, so how could they not fight their way out? There were only 2 of them now, which was already the easiest situation he had expected. However, he couldn't continue to drag things out. Most of the people waiting here weren't powerful experts. If he continued to drag things out, those powerful experts would arrive one after another and the difficulty would increase. Die. Suddenly, the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master attacked. He was in high spirits and had the demeanor of a peerless overlord. Rumble! A series of violent explosions and deafening roars were heard. A series of attacks caused the void to churn endlessly. Even the mythical experts hid far away at this time. A battle of this level was enough to seriously injure them. Even if they were swept by the aftermath, it would be unbearable. Yi Shiwen constantly dodged and evaded the attacks of the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master in an orderly manner. He constantly formed hand seals and unlocked the seal on his body. The power in his body surged out little by little and impacted his body. After entering the 5th level of the Paong realm, his strength was even stronger and he had a stronger ability to withstand this power. He steadily withstood this terrifying power that impacted his limbs and bones. It was a powerful force. Originally, the Divine Union Lord had been watching the battle from the side. His pride and self-esteem wouldn't allow him to join forces with the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master to attack Yi Shiwen. He was just a kid at the 5th level of the Paong realm. If he had to join forces with the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master, then he would basically lose all his face. However, he suddenly noticed the divine power that was constantly emitting from Yi Shiwen's body. That was the power that truly belonged to the god. It was like a surging river that directly swept out and revealed monstrous power. He suddenly had a trace of enlightenment. Perhaps Yi Shiwen had relied on this divine power to kill the thunder behemoth and Dai Jibai. All along, everyone had been guessing what method Yi Shiwen had used to kill the two experts at the 9th level of the Paong realm. The experts at the 9th level of the Paong realm were not cabbages that could be found by the roadside. Even among the mythical experts who had broken through to the Paong realm, it was rare for them to break through to the 9th level of the Paong realm. Dai Jibai's status in the Divine Union was second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people. He had painstakingly worked for thousands of years and had only managed to recruit an expert at the 9th level of the Paong realm. The Divine Union didn't have any foundation, so they could only rely on external recruitment to quickly fill the gap in their combat power. Even so, he didn't underestimate Dai Jibai. Even if Dai Jibai wasn't a match for him, he wouldn't fall in the hands of a junior like Yi Shiwen and lose his life. Many people were still guessing what kind of method Yi Shiwen had used. The moment this idea appeared, it was like maggots in the tarsal bone, and there was no way to get rid of it. Yes, this was the only possibility. Only by borrowing the power of the gods that surpassed mortals could it be possible to achieve such a result. He immediately became vigilant. If Yi Shiwen really had such an ability and didn't borrow the power of Yimo, wouldn't that mean that he had the power to threaten them? He immediately became vigilant when he thought of this. Divine Fist of Redemption. The Heaven Wasteland Palace Master let out a cold roar. He did not use the traditional lost technique of the Heaven Wasteland Palace. Instead, he used an ancient martial art that he had never seen before. The ancient aura and the power of redemption fused together. It directly smashed everything and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. In the successive battles, he had already forced Yi Shiwen into a corner. This time, he definitely wouldn't let Yi Shiwen escape. That dreadful fist force fell from the sky and directly bombarded Yi Shiwen's body. Boom! A huge explosion set off a monstrous wave of air. Smoke and dust filled the air, and a huge mushroom cloud slowly rose up, setting off a shock wave that directly overturned the ground. Just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was either dead or seriously injured, a huge golden hand suddenly grabbed out from the endless smoke and dust. Unexpectedly, it turned the tables and arrived in front of the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master. The Heaven Wasteland Palace Master opened his eyes. Countless laws were constantly circulating in his eyes, and his sharp gaze directly shot out, forming a distorted space in the surroundings. The huge golden hand that had grabbed out vibrated at a high speed in the void, trying to directly break this space and grab the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master. Chapter 2132. As the endless smoke and dust dispersed, Yi Shiwen, who should have been grabbed to death, was standing in mid-air like a golden god of war. His entire body was covered with divine power, constantly spewing out an incomparably powerful aura. His entire body seemed to be undergoing a rapid change. The golden hand that he had stretched out was constantly vibrating in the void, trying to shatter the distorted space, but it could not penetrate that space. Without hesitation, he quickly retracted his hand after his attack failed. A tyrannical power was constantly boiling on his body. That's the Eye of Redemption. I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to see the Eye of Redemption. Many mythical experts were shocked. Even though they were all mythical experts, for them to have the opportunity to see the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master use this unique skill, it was extremely rare. That's right. Although the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master is the leader of the Heaven Wasteland Temple, he had a fortuitous encounter when he was young. It is said that he obtained the inheritance of a deity, the Lord of Redemption, and cultivated the power of redemption. The Eye of Redemption is also a powerful magical power. It is said that the eye of redemption condensed by the power of redemption can even distort space and transform it into a space of redemption. It is innately invincible and no one can break through it. However, it is extremely rare in the entire Xian world to be able to force the Heaven Wasteland Temple to use the power of redemption. How did Yi Shiwen do it? Everyone was incomparably shocked. The Heaven Wasteland Temple Master looked coldly at Yi Shiwen and finally said, "You should be proud to be able to force me to this point. However, you're still far from being able to compare with me. Today, I'll send you to hell." The Heaven Wasteland Temple Master's body moved and he suddenly raised his fist. In an instant, everything between the heavens and the earth disappeared without a trace. The sky was filled with the power of redemption, and it went straight into people's hearts. It made people feel remorseful for the many things they had done in the past, and they needed someone to redeem them. Many people who were mentally unstable had even prostrated on the ground. Under the influence of the power of redemption, they were nothing. Fist of redemption. Boom! An incomparably powerful and peerless divine fist struck horizontally from the sky and directly forced Yi Shiwen to move forward. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a sense of shame in his heart. Under the influence of this feeling, he actually wanted to accept the redemption of the power of redemption and save himself from the sea of suffering. It made him unable to move at all. He could only watch as the redemption fist blasted towards him. However, this thought only appeared for a moment. It immediately disappeared without a trace. It was suppressed by his Mingxin ancient tree. I have no regrets in my life, I don't need redemption, and I don't need you to redeem me, Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and the shadow that was shrouding his heart was cleanly broken. However, he was incomparably shocked in his heart. This punch could actually affect his mind. If it wasn't for the enlightening mind ancient tree, an ordinary person wouldn't have been able to block this punch. They could only obediently allow themselves to be captured. It was really shocking and terrifying to be able to affect one's primordial spirit to this extent. If one couldn't really get rid of the shadow in his heart and reach the realm of having a clear conscience, then even if he didn't die, his martial arts cultivation would be far more difficult than ordinary people in the future. Any martial arts cultivation paid attention to bravery and diligence. One must be full of confidence in oneself and never doubt oneself. Otherwise, one's Tao would collapse. From this, it could be seen that the power of this punch was indeed quite amazing. Yi Shiwen's body constantly operated the observing person scripture, and directly boiled up endless divine power. Then, he directly blasted out a punch. Human Tao fist. He didn't hold back in the slightest. In the face of such a matchless master, even he had to be careful. Suddenly, an incomparably huge city appeared out of thin air in the void. Above the city, the surging mortal qi surged up, forming a monstrous airwave, and directly blasted towards the redemption fist. Boom! An incomparably huge roar sounded. Yi Shiwen's Tao fist directly broke the redemption fist, but still retained some power, and directly rushed towards the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord. However, when it entered the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord's body, it was broken by the Eye of Redemption, and could not really hurt the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. The Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord had cultivated for more than 10,000 years, and his eyesight was tyrannical. Almost at a glance, he recognized the origin of Yi Shiwen's punch. It was the human Tao fist of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. Impossible, even the Azura tribe doesn't have such a complete inheritance of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. How did you get it? Cut the crap, I'll kill you. The divine power around Yi Shiwen's body was intense, and the small world around him immediately caused a strong vibration, and directly turned into a domain that was under his control. Again, human Tao fist. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and the power of the human Tao fist violently surged out of his body, turning into an incomparably huge city, and a powerful and unparalleled power directly gushed out. "Alright, I'd like to see to what extent you can persist." The heaven-desolate temple master was so angry that he started laughing. It would have been fine if it had been the leader of the divine union. Even he had to admit that the leader of the divine union was stronger than him. However, Yi Shiwen was nothing but a junior. An extremely pure power of redemption emerged from his body, and it was accompanied by a stern murderous aura that directly swept out. World redemption! Whoosh! His fist blasted out, and immediately turned into a surging power of redemption, which directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's huge human Tao city. Suddenly, the surging mortal world, which was originally the most powerful, seemed to be unable to exert its great power. The mortal world was the mind power of the human race. It was formed by the convergence of countless people's thoughts, and that was the mortal world. However, it was impossible for everyone to not make a mistake in their life. They all needed to repent, and they all needed the power of redemption. Thus, in the face of this power of redemption, they actually retreated step by step and collapsed inch by inch. At this moment, the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord was like an incomparably powerful Lord of redemption, who wanted to redeem everything in the world. Everything in the world was not wrong, and once there was a mistake, there would be a gap in the mind, and once there was a gap, it would be controlled by his power of redemption. This was the most powerful aspect of this divine fist. The one who really needs redemption is you. Yi Shiwen's human Tao fist was actually defeated bit by bit. Of course, he did not think that human Tao fist was inferior to the fist of redemption. Although it was a fist technique that was separated from the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, it was already superior to everyone else. It was just that he had not mastered it to perfection. He had only just mastered human Tao fist, and had just made some small achievement. However, the Lord of Heaven Wasteland Temple was different. He had been immersed in this fist technique for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. He had already thoroughly grasped the profound meaning of the power of redemption. Yi Shiwen's inexperienced consolidation couldn't be compared to him. Yi Shiwen could use his divine power to offset a part of their advantage. However, their advantage of thousands of years of cultivation was directly manifested. Their profound foundation was reflected in a casual attack. Yi Shiwen, who didn't have any foundation, couldn't be compared with them. With a shake of his hand, an incomparably huge picture scroll suddenly appeared. It was the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram. The power of the 5 elements constantly rotated on the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, forming a monstrous formation. It directly turned the monstrous attack into nothingness, and all of it was absorbed into the 5 elements' great formation. The Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord had the Eye of Redemption, but Yi Shiwen's 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram was not to be trifled with. Each had its own ingenuity and strength. However, the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord did not panic at all, and bombarded the air with another punch. "Wrong on top of wrong!" he shouted loudly, and the fist pressure directly bombarded Yi Shiwen like a mighty long river. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that every word he had said was wrong, and every decision he had made was wrong. This was a mistake on top of a mistake. This was not just a competition of martial arts skills. At the same time, it was also a competition of martial wills. Once one's martial will was destroyed, it would be 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times more terrifying than being directly defeated. What a powerful fist technique! But do you want to judge me? You're still far from it. Yi Shiwen sneered. Although the impact of this martial will was very powerful, he had the enlightening mind ancient tree to calm his mind. This kind of impact of martial will was very easy for him. Again, human Tao fist. He blasted out another punch, and all the muscles in his body were tense. Every time he blasted out a human Tao fist, It looked very monotonous, but in fact, every time he blasted out, his understanding of human Tao fist would go to a higher level. For this level of martial arts, he could only deduce it to the point of minor accomplishment. The more profound parts required more profound cores and more time, which he did not have. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to hone his human Tao fist, so that he could directly enter the next level of attainment. At the same time, the mysterious space in his body was constantly operating, analyzing all kinds of mysteries about human Tao fist. More mysteries were all analyzed by him, and then reflected in his human Tao fist. The city that was blasted out by human Tao fist became bigger and bigger, and the 3,000 feet secular world became sharper and more vigorous. Boom! The two of them collided in the air. Neither of them held back. The tyrannical power directly forced both of them to retreat. However, Yi Shiwen only took 3 steps back to offset all the power. On the other hand, the Heaven Wasteland Palace Lord took 7 steps back before barely stopping. The difference between the two sides seemed to be obvious. Yi Shiwen, who was wrapped in divine power, was earth-shattering and incomparable. "Let's see how much longer you can persist," the Heaven Wasteland Temple Lord sneered. "If I'm not wrong, your body is about to collapse." Chapter 21:33. "Let's see how long you can hold on," the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master sneered. "If I'm not wrong, your body is about to collapse." He was indeed very experienced. The Eye of Redemption seemed to be able to see through the truth of the universe and see through everything. He instantly understood the source of Yi Shiwen's power, and with his rich experience, he immediately judged that Yi Shiwen was using the power of his body to devour the divine power. Although he had fallen into a disadvantageous position, he wasn't depressed because he hadn't lost to Yi Shiwen. Instead, he had lost to that strand of divine power. However, this strand of divine power didn't belong to Yi Shiwen. It would be exhausted sooner or later. It couldn't be used forever. Even if he wanted to use it for a long time, his body could not withstand the destruction and scouring of such a powerful force for a long time. Compared to mortals, the power of the gods was too great. Even if there was only a little remnant of divine power left, it was still enough to make him, one of the top 10 experts in the mysterious world, flustered. "At least I can hold on until I kill you," Yi Shiwen sneered. The Heaven Wasteland Temple Master did not say anything more, and directly blasted out another punch. The Fist of Redemption. This mighty power was boiling. Although he was not as good as Yi Shiwen in terms of divine power, his skill was much more profound than Yi Shiwen's after all. Save the suffering. When he blasted out this punch, the shadow of the peerless divine fist was finally fully formed, forming a torrent that directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen. At this moment, he was the real Lord of Redemption. He wanted to save everyone in the world and turn them into his believers. This punch simply surpassed the power of all his previous punches. In other words, he did not even use his full strength just now, and this was just the beginning. Boom! A powerful force directly surged out and directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram. The 5 elements' great formation dimmed, and cracks appeared directly from the vibration. The tyrannical power of such a force was simply beyond imagination. However, it was only a little bit. Soon, Yi Shiwen wrapped it with endless divine power, and the little bit of cracks were almost all restored. A strong killing intent flashed in the eyes of the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple. Yi Shiwen could be said to be one of the most powerful enemies he had encountered in his life. Yi Shiwen had used his trump card right from the start. The inheritance of the Savior was one of his most powerful trump cards. In the past, he would only use this trump card when he encountered an enemy he couldn't deal with. His fist technique would be earth-shattering once it was used. It could easily defeat an expert of the same level and even contend against the leader of the Divine Union with this fist technique. But now Yi Shiwen had completely received it. Yi Shiwen had only cracked his 5 elements great array, and it was restored in an instant. It was equivalent to doing nothing. Fortunately, he still had the Eye of Redemption, which made him almost invincible. With the help of the Eye of Redemption's distorted space, although he was still standing there, he had actually come to the world of redemption and transcended this world. When he attacked, he could impact the power from the world of redemption. On the other hand, if someone wanted to attack him, they would have to penetrate the layers of defense and attack him in the world of redemption. That was simply impossible. No one could do it. However, the fluctuation of his mood had almost been restored in an instant. For him, the real battle had just begun. Yi Shiwen, who relied on divine power to dominate, would die in his hands sooner or later. The boundless power of redemption swept out like waves from the ocean, spreading out with the heaven wasteland hall master at the center. His tall figure stepped on the waves formed by the power of redemption, and the surroundings seemed to have become the praise of the deities of the heavens and myriad worlds. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. "You want to exhaust me to death? I don't think you can wait that long." The endless divine power around his body gave him great power. He slapped his big hand and smashed the power of redemption on the spot. Then, it rushed directly towards the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple. Yi Shiwen did not intend to prolong the battle. Therefore, he did not hold back and used his divine power to his heart's content, so that every move of his contained a powerful attack power. In an instant, it directly blasted in front of the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple and directly broke his Eye of Redemption. Although his Eye of Redemption was powerful, it could not hold on compared to Yi Shiwen, who used divine power regardless of the cost. Almost in an instant, it completely collapsed. Yi Shiwen's attack followed like a shadow and directly arrived. Not good. At this point, even the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple was a little flustered. He secretly cursed in his heart that Yi Shiwen was simply shameless. This was not Yi Shiwen's power at all. He borrowed the power of the gods, which was equivalent to him constantly losing to the power of the gods. Although he understood the reason, he was still extremely angry that he was forced to this point by Yi Shiwen. He retreated again, and constantly blasted the fist of redemption, wanting to resist the seemingly crazy Yi Shiwen. In the distance, many mythological experts were a little scared when they saw this scene. Their strength might not have reached that level yet, but their eyesight was not the least bit inferior. They could also see that the power that Yi Shiwen could rely on was only that divine power. Even so, they were still shocked that that little bit of divine power could exert such amazing power. Indeed, they were still too far away from the gods, even if it was just a little bit of the remaining power of the god. Their hearts were also burning with passion. If they could also find a way to obtain some divine power, wouldn't they also have the strength to contend with peak mythological experts like the leader of the Divine Union and the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple at a critical juncture? However, this was just a thought. In just an instant, they had already driven it away. This idea was really too unrealistic. Putting aside the fact that divine power was very difficult to obtain, even if they could obtain it, it would probably explode as soon as it entered their bodies. Although they were all mythological experts and their physical bodies were far stronger than ordinary people, they were still far from being able to contain true divine power. They didn't know what kind of monster Yi Shiwen's physical body was to actually be able to withstand the impact of that terrifying power. However, they also knew that Yi Shiwen wouldn't be able to persist for long. Hence, the only suspense was how long Yi Shiwen could persist, and whether he could persist until the Divine Union leader and the Palace Master of Heaven Wasteland Temple were beaten to the ground. "Are you still not going to make a move? Make a move quickly and get rid of him. When the time comes, we will split the harvest in the Divine Tomb in half. Otherwise, when the others arrive, I'm afraid that we will only be able to eat the leftovers." the palace master of Heaven Wasteland Temple still called for the leader of the Divine Union at this critical juncture. His so-called dignity and pride were not worth mentioning compared to his life. He had never been in such a sorry state before. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen was on his must-kill list, and the leader of the Divine Union was also his archenemy. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would be forced to ask for help from his archenemy. And all of this was caused by this damned human in front of him. When this damned human's godly power was completely exhausted, he would definitely tear him into 1,000 pieces and make him die a horrible death, never to be reincarnated. The leader of the Divine Union pondered this for a moment and weighed the pros and cons. Although he was confident that given his strength, he would still get a share no matter how many people came later. However, splitting the spoils between 2 people would still be better than splitting it between 10 people. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen actually possessed the power to threaten him in such a short period of time. Even though this power wasn't his, it was still dangerous enough. In a sense, he admired Yi Shiwen and even called him a younger version of himself. However, it was also because of this that he understood how terrifying such a person was. This person definitely couldn't be left alive. The leader of the Divine Union finally made a move before the palace master of Heaven Wasteland Temple was forced into a desperate situation. Seems like there's no other way today. Come at me at the same time. Let me see the true power of a peak mythological expert. Yi Shiwen shouted. He wasn't the slightest bit afraid of facing 2 supreme experts. He knew that today's opportunity was hard to come by. If it were any other time, without the protection of divine power, if he were to fight against these 2 experts, he would be slapped to death. The suspense would be whether he would be slapped once or twice. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. Being able to go all out against a peak mythological expert at the 5th level of the Paong realm would bring unimaginable benefits to his future martial cultivation. He definitely wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. What? He actually wants to fight against 2 experts at the same time? The leader of the Divine Union is known as the #1 expert in the mysterious world. He's the person closest to becoming a deity, yet he actually wants to fight against 2 experts at the same time. What the hell is he thinking? Some mythological experts were completely stunned. They simply didn't dare approach the battlefield where the 3 of them were fighting. Even though it was the entrance to the core of the divine tomb, there was no room for them to approach with 3 such ferocious experts overseeing it. Anyone who could face any one of them without being defeated would already be considered an invincible expert. However, he actually wanted to fight against 2 experts at the same time. This already made everyone feel dizzy. They must have seen it wrong. They must have seen it wrong. Yi Shiwen actually has such a trump card that allows him to fight against 2 experts at the same time. Fortunately, I didn't act rashly. Otherwise, if I really infuriated him, I'm afraid I would have died at his hands. I originally thought that Yi Mo had made a move. Now, it seems like he must have done it himself. How arrogant! The leader of the Divine Union sneered and made his move. Chapter 2134. Many people trembled a little when they saw that Yi Shiwen was going to fight 1 against 2. Originally, they had seen the battle between Yi Shiwen and the Bronze Titan. They thought that Yi Shiwen's combat power was already at its peak. It was terrifying to be able to defeat a Bronze Titan with a realm 2 levels lower. However, they didn't expect that Yi Shiwen's true peak combat power was here. No matter what kind of power he used to achieve it, it was indeed far beyond everyone's imagination. When he was fighting the Bronze Titan previously, he probably didn't use any strength at all. Maybe he was just playing around. If he doesn't die today, we can be on good terms with him. There's no harm in that. Originally, many people wanted to capture Yi Shiwen in exchange for rewards. Now, they completely gave up on this idea. Wouldn't they be courting death if they still dared to do so now? As for winning him over, they didn't even dare to think about it. After all, Yi Shiwen had displayed his fighting strength. Only those few overlords of the Xian world would have the qualifications to talk about winning him over. But now, they could only talk about befriending him at most. That was all. Even if they were to be on good terms, it would depend on whether Yi Shiwen was willing to be on good terms with them. Of course, the premise was that Yi Shiwen could survive the siege of these two peerless experts. Although he had the upper hand, it was useless. His power was strange and couldn't be compared to the power of the source of these two experts. At this moment, another peerless expert came through the vast sky, followed by several powerful mythical experts. Cloud Beyond City. The people from Cloud Beyond City are here. The heavenly Cloud City was also a peerless overlord in the Xian world. Its city lord was also one of the top 10 experts in the Xian world. His strength was not inferior to the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the Divine Union leader. It was a young man about 30 years old. He was dressed in a light blue robe and exuded an inextinguishable divinity from head to toe. He was unyielding and invincible. This was the city lord of this generation of Cloud Beyond City, another peerless overlord. The city lord of heavens beyond Cloud City saw the three people fighting in the void. Even he, who had always been calm and collected, unexpectedly revealed a horrified expression. It was especially so for the experts who followed behind him. They were completely shocked when they saw this scene. Could it be the Divine Union leader and the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master? How is that possible? These myth experts were all shocked. They tried their best to widen their eyes, thinking that they were seeing things. They were definitely seeing things. How could this be possible? The Heaven Desolate Hall Master had ruled the Heaven Desolate Hall for more than 10,000 years and was one of the peerless experts of the mysterious world. Unless a deity was reborn, no one would dare to say that they could suppress him. Needless to say, the leader of the Divine Union was the #1 expert in the mysterious world. He was known as the #1 person below the gods and was unrivaled in the world. Now, the two of them had actually joined forces to fight a single person. Was there anyone in this world that they needed to join forces to defeat? They thought about all the old fellows in the Xian world and the nearby worlds who lived in seclusion, but none of them fit the criteria. Who is this person? This was the only question left in everyone's mind. If there really was such a ferocious expert, there was no reason for them not to know about it. This was simply impossible. Is that person Yi Shiwen? A legendary expert of heavens beyond Cloud City suddenly screamed. He immediately recognized the figure wrapped in the golden light. Who else could it be other than Yi Shiwen? However, everyone was even more puzzled than when they didn't know it was Yi Shiwen. Although Heavens Beyond Cloud City was not like the Divine Union and the Heaven Desolate Hall, where Yi Shiwen and the Divine Union had become mortal enemies, it was definitely not any better. There were even conflicts that broke out, but under the control of the City Lord of Heavens Beyond Cloud City, it did not continue to evolve into a huge conflict like the one between the Heaven Desolate Hall and the Divine Union. They were somewhat glad that they had tried to prove that the City Lord of Heavens Beyond Cloud City was right. Over the years, the losses that Yi Shiwen had caused to the Divine Union and the Heaven Desolate Hall could be said to be shocking. Even if he was killed in the end, there was no way to make up for the loss of experts and wealth. In any case, as long as Yi Shiwen did not offend the Heavens Beyond Cloud City, there was no need for them to fight to the death with him. How can Yi Shiwen be so strong? These legendary experts were shocked. Although they tried their best not to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen, it didn't mean that they didn't pay attention to him. In their opinion, although Yi Shiwen's progress was extremely fast, but he hadn't reached such a shocking level. Even 2 of the top 10 experts of the mysterious world had been beaten to such a sorry state when they joined forces. I must have seen wrongly. How can Yi Shiwen's strength increase to such a level all of a sudden? Could it be that he has obtained the inheritance of a deity and obtained enlightenment? In the eyes of many people, this might be the only explanation. No, it should be the divine power in his body. The city lord of heavens beyond Cloud City had a higher cultivation and was the first to see through it. He frowned slightly. Even if Yi Shiwen possessed divine power, he was still too tyrannical. The power of a deity running rampant in the body was something that even he, who was just a step away from Tao validation, dared not imagine. Tao validation was not something that could be faked. If one did not step into Tao validation, one would not step into Tao validation. And if one did not step into Tao validation, the difference was like heaven and earth. He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. No matter what method he used, Yi Shiwen, who had such strength, could not be underestimated. Not to mention that there was a tyrannical Yi Mo and 2 experts at the peak of the myth realm. The rise of the human race could be imagined. At this time, the 3 people on the scene had already noticed the arrival of the city lord of heavens beyond Cloud City. The 3 of them were a little anxious. This was only the arrival of the city lord of heavens beyond Cloud City. If this continued, they were afraid that even more top experts would come one after another. At that time, things would become even more complicated. They must get rid of their opponents as soon as possible. It was rare for the 3 of them to agree on this aspect. Yi Shiwen waved his hands and the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram unfolded directly. His entire body began to churn. The power of the 5 elements turned into a great formation and slowly unfolded under his feet. He stood in the center of the 5 elements grand formation and used the power of the 5 elements grand formation at will. The 5 emperors' battle armor directly appeared on the surface of his body. His whole body and the 5 elements grand formation merged into one, just like the emperor of the 5 elements. There's not much time left, so I'll interrupt you. Yi Shiwen carried boundless divine might and suddenly blasted out a punch. The human Tao fist turned the sky and earth into a human Tao city. The surging mortal world actually enveloped the divine union leader and the desolate heaven underworld temple master. Even though it was 1 against 2, Yi Shiwen did not hesitate at all. He was invincible. At the same time, the desolate heaven underworld temple master leaped up on the spot and unleashed a boundless Tao technique. He blasted out the divine fist of redemption directly. It was a big move, trying to break Yi Shiwen's human Tao fist. However, the power of human Tao fist had reached a shocking level under the blessing of divine power. He blasted out circles of the power of redemption again and again, but he couldn't break Yi Shiwen's offensive at all. He could only retreat and resist. At this moment, the divine union leader finally showed his prowess. A blood-red halberd appeared in his hand. It was stained with the blood of countless enemies and emitted a soul-stirring bloody aura. The tyrannical sky halberd was the weapon that made the divine union leader famous. Like the desolate heaven underworld temple master, the divine union leader naturally could not be some random monkey who had popped out of a rock. He had also obtained the inheritance of a matchless overlord, which was why he had been able to cultivate to this day and become invincible. He had not taken out his weapon just now, as he felt that Yi Shiwen was simply not worthy. However, he no longer cared about his pride and self-esteem. Compared to his life, it was not worth mentioning at all. Yi Shiwen, do you really think that you have become a god? You actually think that you can stop both of us by yourself? The divine union leader bellowed. This time, he definitely would not let Yi Shiwen off. This was the core of the divine tomb, and it was related to his path. He definitely would not give up. Don't talk so much nonsense with him. Let's go all out. If he doesn't die today, then we will. The desolate heaven underworld temple master was really angry. He had never been forced into such a difficult situation before. This junior had actually forced him to this point by relying on his divine power. The aura of his whole body had been completely transformed into the power of redemption. Suddenly, all of it protected him, and turned into the Lord of Redemption. It constantly bombarded and dispersed the mortal world's turbid aura that Yi Shiwen's Taoist fist had shrouded over. Yi Shiwen did not say much. He was holding his breath and trying to get rid of the two of them in one go. He could not maintain this state for too long. Boom, boom, boom. The three of them were fighting in the sky. The arrival of the experts from the heavenly cloud city had made them feel a sense of urgency. They had to get rid of their opponents as soon as possible. 1 against 2. This Yi Shiwen is too terrifying. Fortunately, we didn't confront him earlier and managed to escape in time. Otherwise, we would have suffered heavy losses at this time. That's right, Yi Shiwen. Previously, the city lord had told us not to provoke him. I had thought that there was no need at all. Now, it seems that it was really necessary. Some people are born with invincible luck. Yeah, apart from him, I've never heard of anyone who could fight against two people at once and even suppress both of them. If he does not die today, his future will be limitless. The city lord of the heavenly cloud city frowned and said, "From now on, regardless of whether Yi Shiwen lives or dies, all the grievances between the heavenly cloud city and him will be written off. No one is allowed to cause trouble for him in the future. Do you hear me?" Chapter 21:35. Although the experts of the heavenly cloud city were a little surprised, they knew very well that this might be the best way to deal with it. Facing Yi Shiwen, who was getting stronger and stronger, it would not be a good thing for the entire heavenly cloud city if they still held on to that little grudge from the past. Even if it was a colossus like beyond Cloud City, unless they could be sure that they could kill them in one blow, otherwise, even if they had just entered the realm of legend, they would still adhere to the principle of not provoking them if they could help it. Naturally, no one would dare to provoke such a colossus under normal circumstances. If there was really such a lunatic, the heavenly cloud city would not be stingy and let him know what true terror was. Speaking of which, the grudge between them and Yi Shiwen had not reached the point where they had to fight to the death. In particular, after seeing Yi Shiwen's combat power, they felt somewhat glad that the heavenly cloud city lord's decision seemed to have weakened their momentum. Otherwise, they might have had to fight him to the death. Let's see how long you can last today. If you can't hold on, today will be the day you die. The Divine Union leader said calmly. Even if your divine power is invincible, you can't last forever. I want to see how you die. That's right, that's it. The Heaven Wasteland Underworld Lord kept retreating and began to defend instead of attack. He was no longer as aggressive as he had been at the beginning. His strategy was already very obvious, and that was to drag Yi Shiwen to death. Both of them were already very angry and full of killing intent. However, they were also very clear that they had no choice but to bow their heads when they were under the eve. They could only wait until Yi Shiwen's strength was exhausted. Then, they would be able to stand up for themselves. Have you noticed that there's something strange about his physical body? The Heaven Wasteland Underworld Lord's voice was heard in the Divine Union leader's mind. How can his physical body withstand divine power? This is genuine divine power, so there must be something strange about his physical body or some mystery that we don't know about. This might even be as valuable as the core of the divine tomb. If we can get our hands on this mystery, our combat power will be further enhanced. When that time comes, we will truly be invincible. Unless the real gods are reborn, no one will be our match. The Divine Union leader was shocked, not because of the Heaven Wasteland Underworld Lord's words, but because he also had the same idea. He had dominated the mysterious world for so many years, so he had ways to obtain some divine power. However, no one had dared to directly use divine power like Yi Shiwen. Those who had such crazy ideas had basically self-destructed and died. He was the only one who had persisted. Although he was known as the #1 expert in the mysterious world, he still wouldn't dare do that, as he could still die. You're right. Just killing him alone is enough to make this trip worthwhile. Add to that the fact that we're going to get those divine essences, and the Tao validation is just around the corner. He's the final obstacle. Kill him! The tyrant's sky halberd in his hand burst forth with an astonishing radiance. Above his head, a phantom image of an overlord appeared. Wielding a long halberd, he conquered the world. An incomparable power erupted from the phantom image. The projection of the overlord made the divine union leader even more tyrannical. His entire body was covered in a layer of armor while his spiritual energy revolved violently and swept out. His aura became even more tyrannical all of a sudden. This showed that the divine union leader was indeed worthy of his title as a mythical peak expert. At the very least, apart from Yi Shiwen had never seen anyone who could match up to him. Kill him and plunder his fortuitous encounter. The Heaven Wasteland Underworld Hall Master bellowed as the power of redemption spread out. His divine fist of redemption blasted out continuously, turning the sky and earth into a land of redemption. This was the most peaceful place in the world, but it was also the most powerful place to kill. The leader of the divine union didn't say anything. Instead, he unleashed his most powerful attack. The tyrannical sky halberd was like a long dragon as it flew straight towards Yi Shiwen. The shadow behind him also held a tyrannical sky halberd and slashed out with boundless power. Not bad indeed, but it's still not enough. The devil's wings behind Yi Shiwen unfurled, raising his agility to the extreme. Then, he punched out with his human Tao fist. He wanted to use the power of these two peerless experts to force himself to comprehend the truth and power of the human Tao fist in advance. One after another, the cities of the human path exploded and smashed down, sending out ripples and shockwaves that had never been seen before. Boom! 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 The deafening collision sounds destroyed everything. Many mythological experts couldn't withstand this kind of power. Yi Shiwen's face was expressionless, and his eyes were ice-cold. However, deep down, he started to feel a little anxious. This series of battles had already consumed more than half of the divine power in his body. If this went on and his divine power was depleted, it would be a disaster for him. His physical body had already been ravaged by the divine power, and he was only relying on the divine power to hold on. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured and collapsed on the spot. I have to go all out. I have to seriously injure them, Yi Shiwen shouted. 6 paths of reincarnation, human Tao fist. He closed his eyes and the essence of the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared in his mind. Then, he blasted out a mighty fist that formed a massive 6 paths wheel behind him and started to revolve slowly. Naturally, he still hadn't reached the level of Yi who could use the 6 paths at the same time. When he used the 6 paths at the same time, he was almost invincible in the world. It was difficult to meet an opponent in the same realm, and the divine shell was just one of the things he relied on. But even so, Yi Shiwen, who had displayed the 6 paths of reincarnation, suddenly raised his strength by a notch. He soared into the sky, erupted with boundless essence, and directly rushed towards the Heaven Wasteland Palace Lord. He wanted to pick the weak one first. The mortal world that filled the sky directly destroyed the power of salvation that the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master had blasted out. The void shook wildly and destroyed everything. How powerful! Why is it even more powerful than before? The Heaven Wasteland Temple Master cursed inwardly. He was extremely angry. He naturally saw that he had become a soft persimmon in Yi Shiwen's heart. He was shocked and angry. He constantly used the Eye of Redemption to barely resist the mortal world's turbid chi. Rippling mountain seal, inverting ocean seal, overturning sky seal. Now's the time. 3 seals in one, break for me! Yi Shiwen shouted. It was unknown when 3 seals had appeared in the sky. The 3 seals suddenly fused together with an earth-shattering aura in one breath, and then fiercely smashed towards the Heaven Wasteland Palace Lord. Boom! The power of the 3 seals in one of the overturning sky seal directly broke the world of salvation formed by the Eye of Salvation, directly broke through the layers of space, and shattered it. Then, the seals directly blasted on the body of the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master. Puff! The Lord of Heaven Wasteland Temple spurted out a mouthful of blood as he was hit in the chest. It was unknown how many of his ribs were broken. His entire body flew out and landed heavily on the ground. Only then did he manage to stop. His eyes were filled with incomparable horror. Yi Shiwen had actually hidden such a powerful trump card. It was even more tyrannical than the 6 Paths of Reincarnation fist, which only had the human Tao fist. It is better to break 1 finger than to injure 10 fingers. There are many people who understand this truth, but only a few dare to do so. This Yi Shiwen is so ruthless and ruthless. He is definitely not an ordinary person. If he can survive, his future achievements will be simply limitless. The City Lord of Heavenly Cloud City, who was standing aside, had a bit of appreciation and admiration in his eyes. Behind him, the mythical experts of Heavenly Cloud City looked at each other in dismay. They did not know why the City Lord of Heavenly Cloud City had said this. It was better to break 1 finger than to injure 10 fingers. How could everyone not understand this truth? Naturally, they would also do the same. Why did he say that only a few people would dare to do so? As if he understood everyone's doubts, the City Lord of Heavenly Cloud City could not help but say, "Look, although everyone understands this truth, only a few would dare to do so. That move of his is definitely not ordinary. As a result, more than half of his divine power has dissipated. The source of his strength is supported by his divine power. However, at the same time, he has the powerful divine union leader by his side, who is eyeing him covetously. This way, he will be facing the tiger's mouth directly." After the City Lord of Heavenly Cloud City said this, many mythical experts suddenly felt enlightened. This was indeed the case. If it had been them, they might not have dared to fight so fiercely. Although they had seriously injured the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master, the remaining divine power would not be able to support him to the extent of dealing with the divine union leader. It would almost be a situation of certain death. In that case, it would be better not to fight so hard. This is simply a situation of certain death. This is unwise. Someone said. No, you are wrong. This is not unwise. On the contrary, this is the general situation. If he continues to exhaust himself like this, his divine power will be exhausted in the end anyway. Although he will gain the upper hand, he will not be able to truly deal a fatal blow. At that time, he will have to face the pursuit of 2 mythical experts. However, this is not the case now. At the very least, there is 1 less mythical expert. Although it seems like the time of his defeat has been brought forward, in fact, this is the best choice. It is just that most people are not as decisive as him. How would a person without courage dare to make such a decision? In the arena, everything seemed to confirm the words of the City Lord of Heavenly Cloud City. The originally rich divine power on Yi Shiwen's body had also been almost exhausted. It had actually started to become very thin, as if everything was about to end. Yi Shiwen, you have brought about your own destruction. Die. The divine union leader roared, his eyes bloodshot. At this moment there was an explosion in the sky and the earth shook. Chapter 2136. A series of rumbling sounds were heard as the core of the divine tomb shook like an earth dragon turning over. Boundless power was squeezed out of the core and exploded with a loud bang. Even the earth was cracking. countless rays of treasured light shot into the sky, shattering the horizon. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted by the sudden change in the core of the divine tomb. The entire divine tomb had shattered, and countless rays of light seemed to break free from some kind of restraint as they flew up on the spot. In the center of these rays of light was a massive divine shell. An incomparably massive wolf demon was faintly emitting a formidable divine might in all directions. This was completely different from the divine elixir that Yi Shiwen had obtained previously. That divine elixir had already been completely destroyed, and its cultivation base had been erased. However, although this divine shell had fallen, it still retained the formidable might of a deity. At the same time, everyone was in an uproar. Even the mythical powerhouses who had been forced to retreat by this earth-shattering battle got excited. There were more than 100 beams of light, and more than 100 powerful celestial devices were about to break free and fly out. Although the crowd didn't know what was happening in the tomb of the god of sin, it didn't stop them from getting excited. Yi Shiwen, go to hell! The divine union leader's expression was surprisingly calm. However, his hands were moving in a dissatisfied manner, as he felt that all the aura in the surroundings was about to ignite and erupt. At this moment, he was the overlord of all heavens. Behind him, there was an extremely tyrannical phantom of an overlord, and it actually fused with his physical body. That was his martial arts incarnation, and because of this, his strength was also raised to a shocking level. Boom, boom, boom. He walked forward. Every step he took shattered the void and crushed everything in its path. His domineering aura solidified the void. Yi Shiwen, who had consumed more than half of his divine power, was already visibly weak. All the space around him had been sealed. The power of the divine union leader, who had integrated with his martial path embodiment, had risen to the extreme. Everyone held their breaths and focused their attention. Even the treasure lights that were about to break free from the shackles could no longer attract their attention. They were all very clear that the outcome of the battle between the two sides was about to be decided. This earth-shattering battle, which could be said to have gathered the strongest experts in the current profound world, would also be decided after this battle. Everyone watched as the divine union leader brandished his halberd and slashed at Yi Shiwen. He finally couldn't stand it anymore and wanted to end things with Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen immediately felt a kind of absolute danger when this halberd chopped down. It could be said that this danger suddenly rushed from the soles of his feet to his head. However, Yi Shiwen didn't panic at all. He had already experienced countless life and death situations, so this level of battle couldn't really make him feel anxious. His entire person merged with the 5 elements grand matrix beneath his feet. The 5 emperors' battle armor on his body burst forth with even more intense light. His entire person was like the incarnation of the 5 emperors. Then, he attacked. Human Dao Fist. It was still the same simple move. However, every time he used it, he would gain new insights and a new understanding of it. Boom! The human Dao Fist and the halberd collided fiercely. Endless energy swept out as if it had traversed the long river of time. The halberd broke through the human Dao Fist and turned everything back into primal chaos. At the same time, the halberd struck empty air, and a surging torrent was thrown directly into the endless void. How is this possible? The divine union leader frowned. He had actually struck empty air. Yi Shiwen's speed was much faster than he had imagined. Even under such circumstances, he had still managed to dodge it. Today's matter ends here. I have benefited a lot. Let's fight again the next time we meet. Yi Shiwen's voice was heard in the void. Everyone saw that he had already rushed into the core of the divine tomb. While everyone was still in a daze, he could see that the top of the divine tomb was cracking. It seemed as if it would shatter at any time. Boundless divine light spread out like a tidal wave, engulfing everything, making it difficult for people to move even an inch. In the very center of the core of the divine tomb, there was an incomparably huge divine shell sitting upright. Around this divine shell, many treasure lights were bound to the ground by arrays and talismans. Yi Shiwen looked at each treasure light and found that it was a pseudo-divine tool. The quality of each treasure light was different, and most of them were not high. They were far from being comparable to Yi Shiwen's 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, yin-yang life and death diagram, etc. However, they were still considered priceless for the outside world. It should have been collected by this wolf demon god on a daily basis. Now all of them were here. And under the body of this wolf demon god, there was a long sword. The long sword had been broken, and only less than 1/3 of it remained. However, it still exuded unimaginable power. On the remaining 1/3 of the long sword, there were many talismans and secret curses engraved on it. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't understand the style of these talismans. They were ancient demon characters, different from the modern characters. Divine tool, this was a divine tool. Although it was a broken divine tool, it was indeed a divine tool. However, compared to a divine tool, nothing was more precious than this divine shell. Yi Shiwen could feel a powerful aura being released before he even got close. Even though he was dead, he could still feel all kinds of powerful majesty. The divine shell of the Dark Lord had been abolished long ago, so it couldn't be compared to this. This was the true majesty of a god. Even though he had been dead for countless years, he still exuded the majesty of a god. Even a legendary expert like Yi Shiwen could feel a strong psychological pressure. What kind of majesty would he have when he was alive? Many divine wills in the surroundings swept over and stared greedily at the extremely powerful deity shell. This was the most important thing, and it was also the thing that they had put in so much effort to obtain. Compared to this, the other things outside were nothing. Yi Shiwen, what are you doing? Stop. Yi Shiwen, don't tell me you want to go against all of us? Seeing that Yi Shiwen seemed to be about to make a move, a loud rebuking sound came from the surroundings. Everyone began to feel nervous. They wanted nothing more than these things. But now Yi Shiwen was actually taking the opportunity to take all of them away. They had been very far away from the battle just now, so they couldn't reach it in a short time. Furthermore, the nearest leader of the Divine Union was quite a distance away from this place. Take them all. Yi Shiwen didn't care about the shameful and angry roars of these people. He seized the opportunity and raised the martial power of his entire body to the extreme. His divine power boiled up and he drew a big hand. Then, he suddenly grabbed those treasured lights that were struggling to break free. Bang! 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 These incomparably powerful pseudo-divine tool lights were all caught by Yi Shiwen's hand. There were dozens of them, and each of them was priceless. They were worth billions of xiandong. They were priceless. It was important to know that it wasn't easy for an ordinary myth expert to own a pseudo-divine treasure. In fact, most of them didn't even own one. Even with Yi Shiwen's wealth, he only had a few pseudo-divine treasures. Although they were of extremely high quality, there weren't many of them. It was obvious how much wealth these dozens of powerful pseudo-divine treasures represented. No, many myth experts screamed, especially the weaker ones. In their opinion, they wouldn't have a share of the divine shell or the abyss. The only thing they could obtain were these pseudo-divine treasures. Even if they managed to snatch one of them, this trip wouldn't have been in vain. Now that all of them had been taken by Yi Shiwen, they were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. The Divine Union leader, who was outside, had already reacted. He wanted to rush in, but he suddenly felt an extremely powerful pressure firmly suppressing him. His footsteps were staggering, and every time he wanted to advance, it was extremely difficult. However, Yi Shiwen walked in without any difficulty. What's going on? How is this possible? He looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. He hadn't realized it before, but when he personally walked forward and was blocked by the divine power, he realized that something was wrong. How did Yi Shiwen do it? The other myth experts had also rushed over. However, they were all blocked by this divine light and couldn't move freely like Yi Shiwen. This included the Cloud City Lord and the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master, who had forcibly suppressed their injuries. Although their speed wasn't slow, it was obvious that they couldn't stop Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't the slightest bit affected by this divine light. On the contrary, he had integrated into it. In the end, the treasures that they had tried their best to obtain would eventually fall into Yi Shiwen's hands. They were about to go crazy when they thought about this. After plotting for so long, they had ended up benefiting someone else. They were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. After Yi Shiwen collected the pseudo-divine weapons, he walked straight towards the god's shell. Around the god's shell, there were 36 celestial energy sources arranged into a matrix. This was also a naturally formed matrix. Once an enemy invaded, it would be activated. However, Yi Shiwen had no problem entering it. Within his body, a gentle divine power spread out, as if it was pacifying this small matrix. He directly put these 36 celestial sources into the Tianyuan mirror. From beginning to end, there wasn't the slightest rebound. Chapter 2137. No, you can't do this. The eyes of these mythological experts almost popped out when they saw this scene. They let out heart-wrenching roars. They could only watch helplessly as Yi Shiwen took away their treasures and wealth. They felt as if their flesh was being carved out of their bodies. They were so angry that they wanted to vomit blood. They had worked so hard for a moment, but everything had gone back to normal overnight. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Yi Shiwen was clearly planning on keeping everything for himself. Originally, they had expected the worst scenario to happen. At most, the majority of the treasures would be taken away by someone else. It would already be very good if they could get 1 or 2 items. However, Yi Shiwen had made their lowest hopes come to nothing. If it had been taken away by someone else, they could only blame their bad luck. However, it was obvious that Yi Shiwen was going to take everything away. How could they give up? This was simply snatching away the meat that was already in their mouth. This was the most hateful thing. Tyrannical Sky Halberd, the Divine Union leader, suddenly erupted. All the vital energy in his body condensed on the tyrannical Sky Halberd, and a massive overlord projection appeared. A torrential wave of domineering aura swept out, directly breaking a portion of the divine light barrier and advancing a large portion. He was the closest to Yi Shiwen, and his strength was also the strongest. In an instant, he was 1 step closer to Yi Shiwen. When the others saw this, they didn't want to fall behind. One by one, they blasted out their strongest techniques and started to close in on Yi Shiwen. All of them clenched their teeth and rushed towards the barrier of the divine light, wishing that they could kill Yi Shiwen. Although many of them had clearly made up their minds not to provoke Yi Shiwen, seeing that the wealth had been taken away by Yi Shiwen right before their eyes made them extremely vile. Furthermore, there were so many of them, so they weren't afraid that Yi Shiwen wouldn't spit it out. Yi Shiwen wasn't the slightest bit afraid of these mythological experts flying towards him. He laughed heartily, but his hands didn't stop moving. After taking away the abyss and the pseudo-Dao treasure, his final target was that tall divine shell. A god's shell was a rare treasure in itself. Now that it was right in front of him, he naturally wouldn't let it go. As soon as he approached, he immediately felt a force of resistance obstructing his advance. The situation was completely different from before. He knew very well that the reason he was able to advance without any hindrance was because the residual divine power in his body was of the same origin as the divine light here. That was why he was fine. But now, when he tried to approach the shell, he was repelled by the shell's automatic defense. Mine, that's my body. The remnant consciousness of the deity that had been suppressed by Yi Shiwen's enlightening mind ancient tree suddenly struggled violently. It wanted to struggle out and escape into the godly shell. It might even be reborn with the help of the godly shell's power if it succeeded. This remnant consciousness had originally attached itself to the statue, relying on the power of faith that it had accumulated over millions of years to barely maintain its existence, preventing it from being eroded by time. Now that such a rare opportunity had presented itself, even though it was still being suppressed, it still went crazy. The sound behind him was getting closer and closer, especially the Divine Union leader, who was just a short distance away. He had already closed in on Yi Shiwen and would be in front of him in just a few more steps. At the thought of this, he didn't hesitate at all. Bang! A terrifyingly powerful divine sense rushed out of his mind. He didn't care about attacking Yi Shiwen's mind. After all, the original divine shell was more important than Yi Shiwen's body. Moreover, it was more suitable for him. With this divine thought as a guide, a gap opened up in the halo that had originally repelled Yi Shiwen. Ha 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 ha! I'm about to be resurrected! The remnant consciousness roared crazily. The face that had condensed was sinister, revealing the fangs in its mouth. Resurrection? You're dreaming! Suddenly, he saw a huge hand descending from the sky, wrapped in a sky-covering divine power, and instantly grabbed him. Then, he only felt a monstrous pressure pulling him in. Then, another divine tree that was suffused with divine light pressed down and suppressed him once again. Ah, I can't accept this! He let out a sharp roar. He was only one step away from success, yet he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen in the end. Yi Shiwen had even used this opportunity to break through the protective halo of the godly shell. He and the godly shell were one and the same, so it naturally wouldn't be a problem for him to approach it. However, Yi Shiwen was different. Therefore, he had set up a trap and used the greed of the godly shell to break through the biggest problem for him. He understood in an instant and couldn't help but become even more furious. He couldn't accept being suppressed like this. He couldn't accept being used by Yi Shiwen like this. Damned human! You won't have a good death. You won't have a good death. A mighty resentment directly rushed over. That was the resentment of the god before his death. All of it was concentrated together. Although it couldn't directly kill people, it could ruin their luck. Everything they did in the future would be affected by this resentment. They would be lucky if they didn't achieve anything. In the end, it was very likely that they would die a violent death. And at the same time, a bloody light directly rushed out of Yi Shiwen's body. It instantly washed away this resentment. Not even a little bit was left. It couldn't affect Yi Shiwen at all. That's the supreme you. He was instantly suppressed by the Mingxin ancient tree. The voice behind him was basically inaudible. Yi Shiwen also slightly breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, he was almost turned over by this remnant thought. It was worthy of being called an incomparably powerful god. Even the remnant thought left behind could make a legendary master flustered. However, there was no other way. Riches were sought in danger. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And the subtle divine power that was originally protecting the godly shell was also slowly recovering. How could Yi Shiwen let go of this opportunity? His big hand directly grabbed towards the godly shell. No way. Yi Shiwen, you're courting death. The Divine Union leader roared unceasingly. He almost wanted to kill Yi Shiwen on the spot. However, he was obviously just a little bit away. It was like a natural moat. Originally, he had pinned his hopes on Yi Shiwen to have no way of taking away the godly shell. After all, this was the body of a god. Even though it was already dead, it wasn't something that an ordinary spatial artifact could contain. An ordinary artifact would directly explode on the spot. However, a scene that made him despair happened. Yi Shiwen actually effortlessly grabbed the godly shell into the Tianyuan mirror. A bloody light flashed, and it was completely absorbed into the mirror. This scene really made him want to vomit blood. Like many other experts, he had racked his brains, but in the end, Yi Shiwen had reaped the benefits. No, it couldn't be said to be a fisherman reaping the benefits. After all, Yi Shiwen had indeed killed a bloody path. It couldn't be considered as taking advantage of the situation. If those pseudo-Dao artifacts had fallen into his hands, although he wouldn't have taken a liking to them, he could have used them to give to his subordinate. He could have recruited many myth experts and made his divine union the #1 colossus in the mysterious world. Now, all of them had fallen into Yi Shiwen's hands. Moreover, the godly shell and the divine source were directly related to his Dao validation. Now, all the opportunities had fallen into Yi Shiwen's hands. His opportunities had been cut off. Even the hatred of killing his parents couldn't be compared to this. His hatred was as deep as the sea, and his heart was in extreme pain. Yi Shiwen had just collected the divine shell, and he clearly felt that the surrounding space which had been suppressed by the divine shell couldn't be suppressed anymore. Everything collapsed with a loud bang, and the void shattered into pieces. The divine light which had been hindering everyone's advance had also disappeared without a trace. Yi Shiwen had put away the divine shell. Everyone immediately felt it, and their faces immediately lit up with joy. One by one, they pounced towards Yi Shiwen like a pack of wolves and tigers. There was still time. As long as they killed Yi Shiwen, they would still have a chance to kill him. In particular, the leader of the Divine Union, who was the closest to Yi Shiwen, was the first to attack. The overbearing power derived from the Overlord mech directly slashed horizontally like a mountain, destroying everything. Boom! In the nick of time, Yi Shiwen directly unleashed his devil wings and avoided this fatal blow. The divine power in his body had almost been consumed, and his whole body's imposing aura was declining crazily. He had completely recovered to the level of the 5th heavenly layer of Paong realm. Although it was far more tyrannical than an ordinary expert of the 5th heavenly layer of Paong realm, it was far from being invincible just now. At the moment when his divine power disappeared, his physical body was like a solid rock. Dense cracks appeared on it. It was clear that his physical body had been forcefully pushed to the limit and was about to explode. Perhaps he wouldn't even need a single blow to completely explode. Everyone present was a legendary expert, so their eyes were very sharp, and they could see this at a glance. One after another, they roared excitedly and bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Countless martial arts torrents fiercely bombarded out, cutting through the vast sky, sweeping everything, just like the stars in the night sky. In everyone's hearts, Yi Shiwen was doomed this time. They were afraid that if they encountered him, he would die even if he was wearing the 5 Emperors' battle armor. This was the result of forcefully overdrafting one's physical body. In the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen directly took out a pseudo-Dao tool from the Tianyuan mirror and threw it on the spot. Explode! He shouted loudly, and the pseudo-Dao tool exploded on the spot. With a loud bang, the aftermath of the explosion directly drowned the martial arts torrents that were bombarding over. An ordinary Paong realm expert only had a pseudo-Dao tool, and a pseudo-Dao tool was almost equivalent to a Paong realm expert. A Paong realm expert was almost the strongest expert below the deities. What kind of power was this sudden explosion? It was much more powerful than any nuclear bomb. The aftermath of the explosion swept in all directions, blocking all the attacks in an instant. Yi Shiwen also took advantage of this powerful shock wave and quickly swept into the distance. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.